UAW Fiat Chrysler workers are voting Tuesday and Wednesday on the new tentative labor contract covering some 40,000 workers. It's a better contract than the one that these workers rejected, and it would be historically very unusual if this second vote didn't accept the agreement. Lower wage tier workers who have 4 years on the job will have the full traditional UAW wages by the end of this 4-year deal. Lower tier workers with less seniority will see their hourly base wages rise by more than $8 an hour over the 4-year contract. The UAW says this deal also includes a $5.3 billion investment in U.S. auto plants and a moratorium on outsourcing. Even if Fiat Chrysler workers approve this labor contract, the UAW still has to get agreements at both Ford and GM. Teamsters negotiators will try again to reach a new labor contract that the 6,000 union truckers hauling cars can approve. The car haulers overwhelmingly rejected the first tentative deal. The National Master Automobile Transporters Agreement covers thousands of car haulers in 39 locals. Workers voting down the first tentative contract felt it was a concessionary contract. In a video explaining the deal that was rejected, Teamsters leadership said it was a difficult negotiating environment, and the proposed contract reflected marketplace realities. The union called it a modernized contract that was geared to rebuild union presence in the car hauling industry. In Wynn's news commentary, our executive producer Frank Emspak deals with the problems in the U.S. retirement system and the very different solutions proposed by two presidential candidates.
The problems faced by retirees dependent on private pension plans made the news last week. Most Americans have little in the way of saving, so corporate irresponsibility places even more pressure on the Social Security system. Every day, corporations are demanding the privatization of some public service. The biggest prize of all is the privatization of Social Security. The biggest obstacle to privatizing Social Security is a well-run, well-funded Social Security system. Presidential candidates have addressed the issue of funding. For example, according to the New York Times, Governor Christie would reduce benefits, extend the retirement age, and eliminate some payroll taxes. Under his plan, the Social Security system would be insolvent by 2030. Senator Sanders would leave the retirement age alone, raise the cap on the payroll tax earnings to all earnings above $250,000 a year, and increase some benefits. His plan would result in Social Security being solvent through 2065. These are big differences and demand our attention. This is Frank Emspak for Workers Independent News.
Workers Independent News is brought to you by the American Federation of Teachers and its 1.6 million members working to reclaim the promise of public education, health care, and public services for our students, their families, and our communities. More information online at aft.org.
You've been listening to WIN, Workers Independent News. For more information, visit laborradio.org.
It's time for the Rick Smith Show.
I want you to get up now. I want all of you to get up out of your chairs. I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, "I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore!"
I don't want to abolish government. I simply want to reduce it to the size where I could drag it into the bathroom and drown in the bathtub.
You bet I cut the taxes at the top.
How dare you? How dare you? Go ahead, make my day.
The Rick Smith Show starts now.
This town gonna be here long after I'm gone. East side, west side, people don't surrender. They've been down, but they still rock on. Oh, and this time is my time. All right, love or hate, it don't matter. 'Cause I'm gonna stand and fight. This time is my time. She got her ups and downs, but love or hate, it don't matter. 'Cause this is my time.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks for being here today on the big program. Lots of things to get to, lots to talk about. Joe Sestak, Admiral, former congressman, going to be here talking about his run for the Democratic senatorial bid for next November. I'm going to talk about why that's important. He's out walking again to what he calls walking in your shoes to restore the American dream. And to me, that all starts with education. It all starts with investment in our nation and trade policies that benefit American workers and American small businesses. Makes sense to me. Pretty simple stuff. I'm not quite sure how we've gotten so far off the beaten path. Not quite sure how we've gone so far astray, other than to say that the wealthy in this country have their priorities, and those priorities don't really match with working people priorities. And this past weekend, we took the couple of days and we went and visited family back in Cleveland and took my son to go see the Broncos and the Browns play in really a very nice stadium, paid for with taxpayer dollars. And I couldn't help, as we sat and we watched the game and had a wonderful time, and one of those moments of growth for my 9-year-old who started off a little timid, started off a little shy, just beaming with, I can't believe I'm here. And by the end of the game, screaming like a lunatic, and interacting with the people around him, growing as a human being. And it's exciting. It's fun. And it's really wondrous to watch the kids grow and to see them become the people who eventually they will become. But I couldn't help but sit there and think of how many kids lost their education because of this big, beautiful stadium. How many people lost the opportunity because we gave all of the tax credits away and we gave all of this wealth to the wealthy class of this country for arenas like this, for, just some really obnoxious kind of separative policies. And I couldn't help but, as we were back home, notice all of the places that are closed down, that used to employ thousands and tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of workers, that now are just empty and abandoned, with a lease or sale sign on the front of which we used to produce things. And I couldn't help, again, we drove by the Ford plant, and I've talked about this before. We drove by the Ford plant there on Brook Park Road in Cleveland, and they're tearing it, a large portion of it down. Maybe they'll rebuild. I don't know. I doubt it. But I remember as a kid, tens of thousands of people working there and all of the ancillary jobs. And it got me thinking about the big lie and what we've been sold, what it is we've constantly been beaten with, which was, all of my lifetime, this has been the call. This has been the mantra. This has been the direction, if you will. And that is, we're not going to do those dirty manufacturing jobs. We're not going to do those dirty jobs anymore. We're going to send that back-breaking, heavy manual labor job somewhere else. Let the poor people do it. And I can't help but go, well, what happened to the poor people here? The poor people who were lifted out of poverty because of those jobs, and of course those working class people who were kept out of poverty by those jobs, now no longer here. And we were sold this idea that we're all going to go to college and we're all going to get these wonderful jobs, and we're going to sit in offices and push paper, and we're going to be the smart ones, and we're going to be the innovators, and we're going to be the entrepreneurs and the people who discover stuff. And I got to be honest, as I sat there thinking about what's happened over the last 30 years, just being back home in Cleveland and seeing the deterioration of a industrial giant, the manufacturing prowess of a nation, not just stripped away, but given away so that the wealthy could have a little more. And then the massive redistribution of wealth that came with that. I mean, stop and think about it for a minute. Well, you had a prosperous working class. A bunch of kids went to high school. They made it through. Maybe they weren't the best students in the world, but you know what they could do? They could take a piece of metal and they could turn it into something. They could create things with their hands. They'd swing the hammer. They'd do the work of building things. of creating and manufacturing, that's gone now. A good portion of that's gone. And it's never going to go back to where it was. It's never going to go back to where we're going to have hundreds of thousands of people working in these industrial settings. It's just not, because we've automated so much and we've spent so much money doing that. I love it. Every time we talk about raising the minimum wage, it always comes with, okay, we're going to raise the minimum wage, but we're going to subsidize business to automate, thus creating the loss of jobs that, that's self-fulfilling prophecy. That, well, we raise the minimum wage, it's going to cost jobs. Well, understand, even if you don't raise the minimum wage, it's still going to cost jobs because they're going to automate no matter what. And you can't have that discussion. But as I went back home and you look at what's going on, it's not just, Cleveland. It's all of the cities that were the industrial powerhouse of this nation, the people that built things. And I sat there and I worry about my children. And I worry about the children of that city who, like me, weren't born with a silver spoon in our mouths, weren't born with the path laid out before us, weren't born with innumerable opportunities. But if you were willing to work hard and play by the rules, you could get ahead. Those days, I fear, a thing of the past. And as I look at going back, and I look at all of those empty factories and all of those empty buildings that used to produce things, I worry about the future. And I think, this presidential election, this time now, is that opportunity to be having these conversations. Talk about why it's so important that we spend time talking about manufacturing and making things. I had a conversation at the restaurant the other night while I was in Cleveland with a couple of guys who were saying, exactly what I've been saying for the longest time. They fear that brain drain because they knew a guy who had developed, and I didn't even understand what it is they were explaining, but he had taken something that they were using in their technology world. They're computer geeks. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but they're computer guys. And he took that and developed on his own a new application and a whole new, and is actually making himself a pretty good living out of it. And I remember, I turned that into, the factory workers used to do the same thing. In fact, my grandmother had told me that while my grandfather worked in the tank plant in Cleveland, he actually helped to develop a different valve for one of the tanks. And, just because he was going, there's got to be a better way of doing this. I'm used to working on cars. I'm used to working on all this stuff. We could do this bit here differently. And we could machine it. I know a guy who can machine. That's how that innovation happens. And my fear is when you lose that hands-on society where now we're just pushing buttons. Do we lose that entrepreneurial spirit? Do we lose that the mother of invention? Do we lose that? And it's my fear that we do. Because the engineers want to be near where the factories are. The designers, the developers, all of the people want to be where the factories are so they can make those tweaks, they can make those adjustments, and they can be right there with people like my grandfather who said, there's got to be a better way of doing this. This isn't quite right. We're losing that. And it comes back down to who owns our politics, who owns this nation. And it's not the working people. And as I sat there and my son and I enjoyed the football game, I didn't see a lot of blue collar, low income workers at the games, considering the tickets were outrageously expensive. The days of working class families going to the ball games, sadly long over in my view. Anyway, lots to talk about today, lots to get to. And we'll get to all of that. Your thoughts, your questions, your comments, 1-888-520-RICK, 1-888-520-7425. Going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk with Admiral Joe Sestak about his walk from Easton over to Allentown and what he's focusing on these days with education, with small businesses, and how do we restore that wonderful American dream. Quick break, right back. Stick around. You listen to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
We can't make it here anymore. You see those pallets piled up on the loading dock? They're just gonna sit there till they rot, 'cause there's nothing to ship, nothing to pack, just busted concrete and rusted tracks. The empty storefronts around the square, there's a needle in the gutter and glass everywhere. You don't come down here unless you're looking to score. We can't make it here anymore.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1983. That was the day that musician Merle Travis died. Known for his unique finger-picking guitar style, Travis wrote songs that captured the hard life of the coal miner. His songs drew from what he had seen growing up in Muhlenberg County, Kentucky. He was born in the town of Rosewood, the son of a coal miner. In 1947, Merle released a 4-record set, Folk Songs from the Hills. The album contained the song Dark as a Dungeon, what would become one of his most recognizable songs.
Come and listen, you fellers, so young and so fine, and seek not your fortune in the dark, dreary mines. It will form as a habit and seep in your soul till the stream of your blood is as black as the coal. It's dark as a dungeon and damp as the dew, where danger is double and pleasures are few.
Another song about the life of a miner was this song, titled 9-Pound Hammer.
It's a long way to Harlan, it's a long way to Hazard, just to get a little brew, just to get a little brew. When I'm long gone, just make my tombstone out of number 9 coal. Old number 9 coal.
Perhaps Travis's most famous song was this one, 16 Times.
Now some people say a man's made out of mud, but a poor man's made out of muscle and blood. Muscle and blood, skin and bones, a mind that's weak and a back that's strong. You load 16 tons, and what do you get? Another day older and deeper in debt. St. Peter, don't you call me, 'cause I can't go. I owe my soul to the company.
Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Chances are, when you took a shower this morning, an AFSCME member made sure that water was clean. When you drove to work, an AFSCME member maintained the road. When you rode an elevator, an AFSCME member inspected it. I'm David Philman, Executive Director of AFSCME Council 13, the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees. AFSCME members enforce regulations, keep prisoners behind bars, take care of patients, protect the environment, and more. The work isn't glamorous, the salaries aren't high, but AFSCME members serve the public in every aspect of our daily lives. Chances are, you'll never see that AFSCME member working in a sewage plant, diving underwater to repair a bridge, or answering a 911 call. But aren't you glad they do? For more information, visit AFSCME13.org. We are AFSCME.
We make Pennsylvania happy! I'm on the way to live the rich folk, and I see how they live it up. While the poor they eat from hell to mouth, rich drink from the golden cup. And it just makes me wonder why so many lose so few win. Give me something to believe in.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Check out the website, thericksmithshow.com. You know, that's what I think a lot of people are looking for, just something to believe in. You go back to 2008, and a lot of people believe that President Obama was going to be the guy who takes us in the right direction. And on some things, he has. But for the most part, I didn't see that New Deal. We're looking to that again here in 2016. And again, every elected office matters, which is why we've spent a lot of time talking about the senatorial race here in Pennsylvania. And the guy back out on the path walked 422 miles across the Commonwealth just under the guise of walking in our shoes to find out what's going on with average everyday folks. Joe Sestak back out, got the comfortable shoes on, walking, I guess, from Easton to Allentown Joe, thanks for taking time for us.
No, it's always a pleasure, Rick. Thanks for having me on.
So you're back out on the road, shaking hands, kissing babies, doing all that stuff. What are you talking about today?
Well, I started off at a high school, East Stroudsburg High School, talking to our national treasure, our youth, and talked about the importance of education. Although I'll be honest with you, they asked me the most questions about veterans. Then I switched over and started walking from Easton after I had done an event on community colleges, because we only have 5% of all our colleges as community colleges nationwide. It's about 25% are community colleges. And with manufacturing about to come home, we've got to take advantage of those community colleges better. And then I'll end up in Allentown. I've only got about 2-3 miles left of my 18-mile walk, doing it on small business. And 98% of all manufacturing firms are small businesses. So we got to get the small business ready for manufacturing coming home, as well as our human capital, our labor force.
Yeah. I was just in the opening segment, I talked about going home to my hometown of Cleveland, and all of the shutdown factories, all of the manufacturing capacity that I saw as a youth growing up in the 70s in Cleveland, one of the manufacturing powerhouses of this country, and how it's all just been idled and allowed to deteriorate and fall apart because we've given our manufacturing base away.
We have. Look, first off, we permitted China to subsidize their companies and sell cheaply, and then to devalue their currency. We weren't tough enough on all that. Second of all, though, right now, over the last 7 years, China's wages have gone up 15% every year, and shipping to get their goods over here is astronomically high. There's only limited shipping left. That's why it costs almost as much today to produce something in China as it does here in America. And so therefore, what I'm focused on is restoring that dream to bring that manufacturing back to Pennsylvania, back to Bethlehem, back to Allentown, back to these places. And we'll get some over to Ohio too, to make sure that this is our moment. And I truly believe it.
Yeah, I mean, but it comes back down to trade policy. It comes down to what we do as a nation and who we allow access to our markets. And at some point, the people who are doing the bidding and doing the negotiating don't quite have my interest in mind and other working people's interests at heart, it seems.
Well, the ones who really lost out on that NAFTA one were those artisans, those who had graduated from high school, those who had gone and gotten a certificate or a community college education, and they were doing fine jobs. And then all of a sudden, they were the ones with NAFTA that lost the job. And if they got another job, because they were all set for their lives, if they got another job, it was usually at lower wages. So they're the ones who really took it in. And they're the ones that have to be protected at all costs. But I also know that we need another 5 million workers in the artisan area who have got a certificate, a post-secondary associate's degree. And that's why I'm focused so much on our community colleges and issues like that can get our workforce ready for this manufacturing coming home.
That's a big part of it. Also, our union apprenticeship trades.
Absolutely.
The work that those folks do.
If anybody goes to a labor, a union where they do training, I don't care if you're laborers or sheet metal workers, my gosh, and the safety that is taught there. There's no more skilled workforce than that.
And for me, this is the direction that we should be talking about policy-wise in this country. Because look, not everyone's going to go to college and be a neurosurgeon or going to be a rocket scientist. There are some people who they want to work with their hands. They want to do those manufacturing jobs because look, you're creating things, and out of that comes the skill of creating other things.
Rick, you hit it on the head. My first job in the Navy was I had the welders, I had the lathe operators, the machinist mate, the electricians, the interior communications men who are now cable types that work for Comcast and others. They kept that ship going. And I have to tell you, when you do welding today, you just don't light the arc and lay the bead. You've got to sit at a computer and design the bead.
Yep.
This is pretty sophisticated stuff. And it is exactly what so many of us need here in America, as men and women ready to work with their hands and have a great living doing.
So as you're talking to these kids at the high school, are these issues that are on the front of their mind? Because these are going to be voters next year, hopefully, right?
That's right. A lot of more seniors, and it was a pretty great class. And yes, we talked about student debt. They're very conscious that they are about to enter colleges. That is, the rate of inflation is outpacing food or anything else. and that the average youth is graduating from college with about $30,000 in debt, and they're very aware of that. So that's why I also talk about community colleges. It's also a step, not that expensive as compared to four-year colleges. You might go there, learn a skill, then go away, and then come back like Drexel University does with Delaware County Community College where I live. And they say, come on up, we'll give you all the credits and go under a four-year degree in business afterwards. And then they can be the business type they want with their own company. It's a great start with our community colleges, but debt is very big on these kids' minds, and rightly so.
And also to foster this idea of a lifetime of learning. I mean, I think we've got it in our head in this country. We go to high school, we get out, we go get a job, and that's the end of it. I've always been a firm believer of going back and learning new skills, even if you don't need them right now. I'm a big fan of that.
You know, Rick, I talked about that. You hit it spot on. Look, we now have health care where we got to continue to improve the Affordable Care Act, where people have a lifetime of health care to make sure they're more productive workers. But the last great compact we need is a lifetime of training, because it's so turbulent a world out there. You come into the U.S. Navy, and we got to this, and let's say you're a fire control technician. First, you repair the radar. Then we send you off for your second hitch when you sign up to learn how to maintain the whole fire control system. Then you go for your third hitch, and you learn the entire weapon system, how to maintain the entire ship. By the time you're ready to retire, my God, the skills you get, and the next job is there. But it's a lifetime of training that we have to get to. So if someone does lose a job, you want to train them for the next higher job,
right?
Not to make the dolls, but to make the machine that makes the dolls that China wants to produce.
But isn't that what employers used to do in the past? Isn't this what the agreements between unions and employers used to be, that we would take someone at the entry level, or maybe you started off in the mailroom and you had the opportunity, as long as your skills and competency let you rise, you could go all the way to CEO?
I quoted the head of IBM today in Easton as we were talking about our workforce, and said how in the early 60s he said his number one priority were his employees. And then after that came the shareholders, and it's become reversed, unfortunately. Look, I talked about today how the investment in training by our manufacturing skills company, a study done by Deloitte shows that since the recession, it has flatlined out. And they, as a private company, have stopped investing into what we need in order to have the trained workforce. And so that's why I spoke about today the community colleges, but also partnering up public-private ventures with these companies to get them going, because we really can be the exporter soon of goods and products to China. They're becoming a consumer type of society, and now's our moment.
Right, but here's the thing, Joe. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I don't care if we're an export nation or not. I want to be able to buy stuff made here. I want to be able to buy products made here in the U.S. by my neighbors. I'd like to start there. How about that?
I think that's great, but why not also? I mean, here's the issue that I'm going to be talking about here in just about an hour. We used to have small businesses. Well, we had small businesses in 1975 before this decline that you talked about, the impact with NAFTA and other things, create 70% of all jobs by small businesses. Today, they still create 70% of all jobs, but there's only 18 new small businesses springing up for every 10,000 working Americans. In 1975, we had 36 that sprung up, twice as many. If we can get back to having our star job creator, small businesses creating those jobs as 36 for all 10,000 Americans, imagine the goods we're going to be producing, the demand for labor that's going to happen. And so now we don't only have enough to sell to ourselves, so we can export to the world also.
I'm with you, but on the education front, I want to go back to that for a second, because we hear this mantra: we're broke, we don't have the money. How do we then fund lifelong learning? How do we get people into the community colleges to be able to afford them and all of that? Because you know what? There's no such thing as a free lunch, Joe.
No, there isn't. But first of all, we have to recognize that education is our homeland defense. And that's why I was on the education committee. It's why in the Navy, you can't even get promoted to senior chief petty officer unless you've earned at least an associate's college degree. We value that investment. Second of all, there are ways to do it. And here's two quick ones. First, we have our loans from the U.S. government at the long rate. In the next 10 years, they're going to make $129 billion on the backs of our youth because the rate's too high. It should be based, as I have in my book, Restore the American Dream, on a 10 and a 30-year bond And that will exactly is when about between those periods when kids repay their loan. And therefore the government makes no profit, and we have a lower interest rate, about 2.5%. Second, we have to make sure that these colleges, that they're penalized. My gosh, we're giving you Pell Grants, public money. We're giving you loans, so to speak. If you can't keep inflation of education at the normal inflation rate, then I think they shouldn't be deserving of our public money. And that's the kind of approach. Third is something called, and I didn't even know what this word meant when I was a congressman, so I got there, articulation. We waste $5.5 billion every year because 40% of our youth have to change colleges because they move or their job forces them to stay out for a year and then come back. Well, guess what? Most colleges won't recognize another college's credit, even though they're just as good. And so what we have to do is stop wasting that $5.5 billion of burden of our youth going back to college for credits that they already done at another college and have a standard by which they're all accepted. So there are ways to get this under control and costs to be within the means of our nation.
And I've got a couple of ideas. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show. We're here with Joe Sestak, Admiral Joe Sestak. His website, joesestak.com. One of the Democratic members running for the senatorial bid here next November. One of the things that gets me, Joe, is you look at these predatorial for-profit colleges that you see have sprung up, the Corinthians of the world. At some point, don't we have to take our tax dollars and our GI money and all of that back from them? Because sadly, they're failing.
In the 90s, all the studies were done before I got to Congress, and you were spot on. Then I got to Congress, and some of them had actually cleaned up their act. I went to visit them. But then I was out visiting one here a few years ago after Congress, and I ran into a vet at it. And I said, oh, yeah, I assume you're here on the GI Bill. Because I'd asked the president, aren't you making sure everybody gets their GI Bill stuff? Oh, yes, we check that on check-in. Well, guess what? This young woman, a vet, never even told about the GI Bill by the school. So my take is the cost of these schools, when you compare them to what community colleges can do, is why Pennsylvania has to change its emphasis, and much more so on community colleges by these private schools, which are, okay, we can have them, but community colleges do the same thing at a lot less cost. And so when you have only 28% of all our youth who are in college, in a community college in Pennsylvania, and nationwide it's 62%, we here in Pennsylvania got to recognize the importance of our community colleges so that you don't have that high cost you talked about of having to go to these 2-year private colleges and paying a lot more for the same thing.
And I would argue getting ripped off, but that's me saying it, not you. JoeSestak.com, the website. Where are you heading to after Allentown, Joe?
After Allentown, I'm going to have a small gathering, just sit around and talk about issues, and then I'm headed home to Delaware County. We've only got about 3-4 hour drive, so it's only about 2 hours.
Well,
and I enjoy it. Up again and starting again tomorrow. Look, you can't beat meeting people.
I mean, that is the grassroots politic that we need. I mean, having the conversations with representatives, and I think what you're doing is fantastic. Out on the road, talking to people, a little connection, I think, is a good thing, Joe. I do.
It's a great thing. Look, I'm going to have to get my message out broader and all that, but you know what, Rick, just being on your show is fantastic. Talk to Pennsylvanians. Thank you.
Well, when you make it this part of the state, when you come to the Harrisburg area, let us know, and we'll get you back here again, all right?
We're going to be there. Take care, and best to you and your family.
Thanks so much, Joe. Joe Sestak. JoeSestak.com, the website in Allentown, doing the walking tour. Give him credit, man. 422 miles and back doing it again. Let's take a quick break. Your thoughts, 1-888-520-RICK, 1-888-520-7425. This is The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Give my money to someone like you. But I couldn't believe in what a crazy man can do.
Not right wing, just right. The Rick Smith Show.
We now know there will be no more drilling in the Arctic during the Obama presidency. This one's done.
Obama administration shuts down Arctic oil drilling.
This is beyond hypocrisy. I'm not even sure what to call it.
Accountability may be coming for Exxon's climate deception.
The time, I think, has come to move to a new generation of technology.
Big changes ahead for the auto industry. Plus, conservatives out, liberals in Canada. So what about that whole Keystone XL pipeline thing?
Yeah, what about it? All of those stories and more straight ahead from bradblog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comments.
We'll be fine with the environment. We can leave a little bit, but you can't destroy businesses.
Okay, well, thank you for leaving a little bit of the environment, Donald Trump. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, a lot of, frankly, really huge stories today. We have just learned that the Liberals have taken over the Canadian government, throwing out the Conservative Party and Prime Minister Stephen Harper. This could have a huge effect on the Keystone XL pipeline and the Energy East pipeline, both controversial and set to ship dirty tar sands oil from Alberta all over the place. I guess it remains to be seen now what will happen with a new Liberal government in charge up in Canada.
Yeah, we should hopefully have more on that in our next episode, but it very possibly could put an end to the nearly 10-year pro-oil agenda of the Harper administration.
Yes, underline the word possibly, given that just days ago, the co-chair for the Justin Trudeau campaign, he's the head of the Liberals, had to resign because of his ties to TransCanada and the oil industry. So a lot of questions, but an encouraging sign, perhaps, at least, that Harper is gone. All right. What other earth-shaking news do you have for us today, Desi Doyen?
Well, accountability may be coming for Exxon. We've been telling you about the blockbuster investigation revealing that Exxon executives knew about the dangers of burning fossil fuels in causing global warming as early as 1977, but Exxon copied the tobacco industry and spent millions of dollars funding front groups to deceive the public and policymakers about the scientific evidence. Now, Congressman Ted Lieu and Mark DeSaulnier, both Democrats from California, have asked the U.S. Justice Department to investigate Exxon in the same way the Justice Department investigated and successfully convicted Big Tobacco on racketeering charges 10 years ago for conspiring to deceive the public. Congressman Lieu explained on the broadcast that it isn't just that Exxon remained silent on what they knew.
They were taking affirmative steps both in what they said, who they funded, and actions they took to push back against climate change science. And keep in mind, they internally took actions to take advantage of global warming. So this is beyond hypocrisy. I'm not even sure what to call it.
What the congressman was referring to there was the fact that not only did Exxon know, but they tried to take advantage of the fact that the Arctic would be melting, and hey, makes it easier to drill up there in the Arctic without all of that ice.
Speaking of the Arctic, another setback for big oil in the Arctic. On Friday, the Interior Department announced that it has halted all auctions of leases to drill for oil and gas in the U.S. waters off the coast of Alaska due to the lack of interest from the oil industry due to slumping global oil prices. Interior Department also announced it will not renew or extend any existing leases in the Arctic, and that includes leases held by Shell Oil, which abandoned its efforts in the Arctic last month after getting disappointing results.
And after getting approval from the Obama administration to do it in the first place, I am glad they have flip-flopped now, so to speak. So good for them. About time.
Meanwhile, a big shift underway in the auto industry after automaker Volkswagen was caught red-handed cheating on U.S. emissions tests. Tesla CEO Elon Musk suggested this may signal the end of the internal combustion engine.
What the Volkswagen is really showing is that we've reached the limit of what's possible with diesel and gasoline.
It appears Volkswagen agrees. VW executives have announced, quote, the future is electric. And in a statement, they say they will now focus their product range and core technologies on building long-range, all-electric and plug-in hybrid cars across all of their brands. And it's not just Volkswagen. Swedish automaker Volvo is also going electric, saying, quote, we believe the time has come for electric vehicles. Volvo announced it will offer plug-ins or hybrid hybrid versions of every model it sells within 4 years.
And that comes on the heels of BMW saying that every single car they make will be electric in some form or another over the next 10 years.
Plus, Japanese automaker Toyota says it will make virtually all gasoline engines from its product line extinct by 2050, focusing on hybrids and electrics and hydrogen fuel cell vehicles.
Nothing but good news today. For more on all of those stories and the ones we couldn't get to, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
Changes. Turn and face the strain. Changes. Don't wanna be a richer man. Changes.
I don't want everybody to vote. Elections are not won by a majority of people. They never have been from the beginning of our country, and they are not now. As a matter of fact, our leverage in the elections, quite candidly, goes up as the voting populace goes down.
The billionaires don't want you to vote this year. We'll send you a message that's loud and clear that the votes can't be counted in your community. Why even register? Don't waste your energy. Don't go to the polls on election day because we bought the election and it better go our way.
Oh, yes. Election day. Who gets to vote? Who doesn't get to vote? Kind of an important thing, don't you think? Well, go back to Wisconsin. And, a lot of Wisconsin seems to be like the ground zero of bad things to happen since 2011. Well, a federal district judge just ruled that the lawsuit brought by the ACLU on behalf of a former homeless Army vet, several technical college students, and an elderly voter who couldn't get her birth certificate, evidently they're not allowed to vote. The ACLU wanted to brought the case saying, look, we should have a larger number of IDs available to show who you are. It's not about these very stringent requirements because Wisconsin has one of the strictest in the country. The court shot it down. Now, the Supreme Court, if you remember, the last time said, no, you can have these things. You can have the IDs. It's important because we're going to stop people from showing up and voting for other people, right? Isn't that what they said? Because, there's been one case in the last 140 years of someone showing up and saying, I'm somebody else. It's ridiculous. It's idiotic, but it's what the right has made hay on. So what the court has now said in this case from Wisconsin is that basically there's a very finite number of IDs that are acceptable, and that's just tough. And the judge, I thought, was fairly interesting because, this vet has a government issued ID from the VA. Now, get this. This guy actually had to beg for bus fare several times to go to the state's office to get a issued ID. Now, homeless guy. How many people are walking around homeless with their birth certificate, their social security card, and all of the plethora of bits of information that the law there says they have to have? Much like here in Pennsylvania. They tried the same nonsense here with this photo ID. Understand, I'm not against the idea of a photo ID. You need to know who you are. We need to make sure that folks are who they are. I'm okay with that. But saying it can only be this is kind of ridiculous. And it then just goes to show me exactly what the right wing wants out of this. They want to limit the number of people voting, much like the Paul Waywer clip right there at the beginning. That guy was the co-founder of the Heritage Foundation, one of the architects of the destruction of democracy in this country. But, he was very honest. Back in 1980, he said, look, we don't want everybody voting. We want us voting, not them. If we can hold them down, we win. And this November 3rd is a huge, enormous election here in the state of Pennsylvania, because going to the polls on November 3rd to elect 3 Supreme Court justices. The people who gets to vote, the people who are going to decide these kind of cases, are going to decide the gerrymandering that's going to happen. Look at our districts now. These are the guys who are going to be part of that. And it's kind of mind-blowing to me that I don't see more excitement around this election. The first time in really history, if you will, since the beginning of the Commonwealth that we're going to put 3 Supreme Court justices on the court. This can change the complexity of the Commonwealth one way or another. I mean, whichever side it goes to, you're going to see a decided change in what's going on in the Commonwealth. And you got to ask yourself, do we really want more corporate policies? Do we want more restrictions in voting? Do we want more of the gerrymandering that we've seen? And I would say the answer is no. But that's why I say this November's election, this November 3rd, mark it on the calendar. You got to get out and vote. Pretty simple stuff. Going to take a quick break. When we come back and talk about what's going on around the world in the news with Talk Radio News Service. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
From the United Nations, this is your World in 2 Minutes. I'm your host, Luke Vargas, with the Talk Radio News Service. A border fence being constructed by Hungary along its border with Serbia is complete, effectively sealing off one entry route used by Syrian and other asylum seekers trying to reach Europe. Slovenia is now recording a major uptick in migrant arrivals, including 5,000 on Monday alone. The country said it will cap arrivals at 2,500 per day, but it's hard to change the weather. Slovenia is now blaming Croatia for letting an unsustainable number of migrants pass through their shared border. Secretary of State John Kerry heads to Germany this week to meet with Israeli government officials and later to Jordan for meetings with Palestinian officials as fighting continues to flare up between the two parties. 34 Palestinians and 8 Israelis have been killed in recent weeks in a series of freak attacks. There have been incidents in the Palestinian West Bank, including an attack at the supposed site of Joseph's tomb in Nablus, but the majority of concern centers on Jerusalem and one of the city's holiest and most central of sites, the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Palestinians allege their already restricted access to the holy site is being further limited as Jewish groups gain greater access. Israel has rejected calls from France for UN security personnel to guard the site and lessen tensions. John Kerry, meanwhile, trying to stake out a reasoned position in the middle of a heated issue, admits something has to change.
In my conversations with the Prime Minister, as well as with King Abdullah and the Foreign Minister of Jordan, they have expressed a desire to try to see this process be able to find a way of making certain that everybody is clear about what is happening with respect to the Temple Mount.
For more global news headlines, visit talkradionews.com.
The most important issues of the day. This is the Rick Smith Show.
Kind of a sad day. Jimmy Joe Bob Webb has dumped out of the race, and I'm not sure if he's going to run as an independent or not, if that's coming up. But I guess he didn't get enough time to speak in the last debate, which he was just lampooned on Saturday Night Live over the "I want time to speak, I want time." And I got to tell you, I love the Larry David imitation of Bernie Sanders, by the way. Anyway, let's find out what's going on around the world in Washington, D.C. I got Luke Vargas, Talk Radio News Service. Luke, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, really glad to be with you.
So what do you think? Jimmy Joe Bob Webb jumping out? Is he going to run as an independent?
If he did, he would make just about as much of a splash as he did as a Democrat. So I can't predict what his next moves are, but boy, he has been humbled by the lack of interest so far. And look, he may be a little bit unconventional. He may seem like he was a little blustery during that debate, but this guy knows how politics works, and I'm sure he's hearing the music from not just his own party, but from the American electorate as a whole. So, I don't see an independent run going anywhere. I doubt he'll do it.
Well, I saw him as one of those people that could have been a VP choice. I mean, I still think Hillary takes Castro because you need the Latino vote, but Webb would be one of those guys who could bring that military experience and that military vote with him, maybe.
He could, but we've seen Virginia start to move blue over the last few election cycles, with that trajectory starting to seem a little bit more safe. I don't know if you need to make such an overt play for that state anymore. Frankly, I think there are just similarly qualified Democrats out there who are old white men who haven't embarrassed themselves on the national stage yet.
All right, good.
You might as well move. I wouldn't really take him very seriously as a VP candidate for anybody who makes it.
Touche. I'm not a fan of Webb. I never have been, even when he was the darling of the party for a while. Never a big fan of blue dog Democrats.
Exactly. I don't think we're going to be seeing much more of him.
All right, good. Off exit stage left. Does Chafee go with him?
I don't know. I mean, I think he was even more comically lampooned by SNL. It's funny. I was just with Hillary Clinton and Martin O'Malley over the weekend, and a lot of folks who've been analyzing that first debate were very quick to lump all three of these lesser men into one category, saying O'Malley, Chafee, and Webb are sort of joke candidates. Some people sort of comically saying, I wonder if they were paid for by Hillary to make it look like she had an opposition that was only weak enough to just melt away. I don't think O'Malley is as much of a lightweight as people might let on. That is not to say that he's shown very broad appeal up until now. And I think he, most of all, is very disappointed by his own performance to date. But that said, I thought he performed very well in New Hampshire. You can tell that he is in this interesting middle ground, whereas Webb and Chafee were really not campaigning on a national level. They were mostly in New Hampshire or just trying to use social media to get into the public consciousness. O'Malley has been in the early stage quite a lot. He is trying to really get his practice in with retail politics, and it shows. And so I'm not so ready to cast him aside. I know he was on the Today Show this morning playing a Taylor Swift song on guitar. And look, I have a lot of problems with this guy's messaging strategy and the fact that his spokesperson sent out an email said, look at all the positive reviews that Martin O'Malley playing Taylor Swift is getting. And then it was just a link to 20 celebrity websites. I was very tempted to tweet out something saying, if you're trying to be taken seriously, this is not the way to do it. But again, I think he does have some chops. It's just a question of finding the right time, the right issues, and trying to figure out a way into that debate. But I'm going to put Webb and Chafee in a very different category than O'Malley, at least for the time being.
Yeah, I think O'Malley's not ready for prime time yet. I think he's you can do this a couple of times before you get it right. Sure. He's down the road.
Yeah. I think if he decided to, saying reload in a few years is not the kind of phrasing I would like to use. But I think if he tried again, he would do this a little bit differently, maybe start off on a different footing. And I think he'd enjoy a little bit more success than he's found this time.
No, I mean, the sad reality, though, is, for most of the people I know in the party structure, Hillary's doing the best work, gobbling up the delegates and the people who are going to be those people casting the votes, that it almost doesn't seem to matter much what the primaries bring.
Yeah. It's worth saying again, though, she is also, I attended her first town hall meeting of the campaign a few months ago in New Hampshire, and she was a little bit rocky out of the gate, but she has quickly shown all of the practice paying off of running for president for multiple cycles. So she's good. I mean, she's getting the reps in. So is Bernie Sanders. These guys are on a whole different level. They're really finely tuned and showing it on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
I think O'Malley just needs more reps.
There you go. Let's look north. What's going on in Canada? I guess the conservative government got the boot, huh?
They're gone after a decade in office. Sort of an upstart Liberal Party there, getting Justin Trudeau elected, a big shakeup north of the border. This looks like it's going to have some interesting reactions or impacts, rather, on foreign policy, on the United States. A lot of people forget that Canada is the largest trading partner of the United States. We're so obsessed with China that we don't realize, where the money is flowing. So at least from an economic sense, there's always a large potential impact in a dollar's sense. I'm looking at some policy papers here. I don't see a large chance that it's really going to shake up the trade between these two countries. But you start to take it to other issues, and I think there will be an immediate impact. One of them is in the domain of climate change. The Harper conservative government had been pretty weak. They were the only country to pull out of the Kyoto protocols during the first phase of them. Again, a lot of countries ended up doing that multiple years down the road. But Canada signaled very early it didn't like having to be bound by those commitments. They were often seen as sort of a pariah in global climate politics. So we're already hearing at the UN climate talks going on in Bonn, Germany today, that there has been a change, that the delegates there are already getting different orders. They're starting to not obey the previous government's demands, that they block various elements of the climate agreement. So we're excited that they're going to rejoin UN efforts. And then you look to Keystone, you look to the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and there's a hope on the American left that another left government up in Canada might be more vocal in shutting down some of these policies harmful to the environment and maybe harmful to labor, broadly speaking, in North America. And this is the government you'd want up there if those are the changes you want to see.
And hopefully some of that enthusiasm makes its way south.
Yeah, look, I'm with you in hoping for that. But, a very decisive result in Canada last night, and one that didn't look very likely a few months ago, but really shows that Canada wants to head in another direction, and that politics up there have been really dominated by Western rural extractive energy interests over the last few years, and increasingly so. It looks like the balance is starting to shift a little back further east towards the urban heartland of Canada, and that's a welcome sign for many, including myself.
Yeah, I'm with you. I understand we've completed a major arms deal with Saudi Arabia. We're giving more guns to the Saudis, really?
Yeah, goody. $11.25 billion worth. These are Lockheed Martin, we call them littoral combat ships. They're very advanced naval warships. They're not going, so the Saudis maintain two different naval fleets. One is on the western part of the peninsula, that's in the Red Sea, over by Egypt and Sudan, and over to the east, you've got the Persian Gulf. And this is where these ships are going. They are going to be guarding against Iran over the Persian Gulf, a short little strait of sea miles, as Donovan would say. And yes, we've heard about this purchase coming down the pipeline for quite some time, but it looks like it really got accelerated in recent months with sort of the increased perception of Iranian aggression. And it's likely going to clear the way for another big arms sale, which is also in the works to the Saudis, which is about $2 billion for 10 very advanced Sikorsky attack helicopters. So that looks like it'll be finished by years, and no hesitation, it looks like, on the part of the administration to let this deal go through. We are happy to be allies, it seems like, with the Saudis for another decade or so.
Yeah, well, we've gone from Bush kissing the Saudi on the lips to Obama kissing. Never mind. Never mind. I understand we've found and located another Islamic State training camp in Istanbul.
Yeah, this is upsetting. I mean, this is not the border region with Syria or someplace far flung away from tourists. We'd heard on Sunday that the Istanbul police had arrested about 50 people. Turns out about 25 of them were kids who were apparently part of a children's Islamic State training camp, helping them understand what it will be like growing up in the caliphate, how to treat women, how to view themselves as soldiers. Pretty upsetting. These are Uzbek immigrants, apparently, so this is sort of a radicalized minority population within the country. But again, this is in basements in the capital, not far off in the hinterlands where the majority of fighting is going on. And if I'm trying to think of what the impacts are here, I mean, this is all the evidence that European nations need that they should not allow Turkey into the EU. There's been some talk of that lately. The Turks saying, look, give us more visa freedoms in exchange for us helping you out with your big migration issue. But there have been a lot of countries in Europe who say this is just too unstable of a country. They're too unwieldy when it comes to the use of their military. They've got too many domestic threats. This is really all the proof you'd need, I think. And it's going to push Turkey further and further away from European Union accession.
Right. And now from Turkey to Hungary, what's going on there?
Well, they completed their border fence. Here's an inspiring story for any Republicans who want to try and say, look, fences are possible. Well, Hungary built theirs in just a few months. It's helpful when it's actually not very long, but it has worked. The migrant flows moving through the Balkans have shifted almost overnight. We're now seeing folks spilling into Slovenia. That country, too, is looking at 20,000 people coming over on a long weekend, and they're saying we might need to build a border as well. So, geez, this strategy seems to be really catching on. All these countries too overwhelmed to do something and not confident that these folks are going to move on to other countries, seem to be resorting to these sort of physical barriers, and that's very problematic from my seat at the United Nations.
There you go. Luke, I appreciate the update. Appreciate the time, man. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Take care.
All righty, Luke Vargas, Talk Radio News Service. Let's take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Radio of, for, and by we the working people. The Rick Smith Show.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to thericksmithshow.com. If you've missed any portion of the program, you can download the podcast at thericksmithshow.com.
You're listening to WIN, Workers Independent News, a production of Diversified Media Enterprises. I'm Doug Cunningham. UAW Fiat Chrysler workers are voting Tuesday and Wednesday on the new tentative labor contract covering some 40,000 workers. It's a better contract than the one that these workers rejected, and it would be historically very unusual if this second vote didn't accept the agreement. Lower wage tier workers who have 4 years on the job will have the full traditional UAW wages by the end of this 4-year deal. Lower tier workers with less seniority will see their hourly base wages rise by more than $8 an hour over the 4-year contract. The UAW says this deal also includes a $5.3 billion investment in U.S. auto plants and a moratorium on outsourcing. Even if Fiat Chrysler workers approve this labor contract, the UAW still has to get agreements at both Ford and GM. Teamsters negotiators will try again to reach a new labor contract that the 6,000 union truckers hauling cars can approve. The car haulers overwhelmingly rejected the first tentative deal. The National Master Automobile Transporters Agreement covers thousands of car haulers in 39 locals. Workers voting down the first tentative contract felt it was a concessionary contract. In a video explaining the deal that was rejected, Teamsters leadership said it was a difficult negotiating environment, and the proposed contract reflected marketplace realities. The union called it a modernized contract that was geared to rebuild union presence in the car hauling industry. In WIN's news commentary, our executive producer Frank Emspak deals with the problems in the U.S. retirement system and the very different solutions proposed by two presidential candidates.
The problems faced by retirees dependent on private pension plans made the news last week. Most Americans have lived on the way of saving, so corporate irresponsibility places even more pressure on the Social Security system. Every day, corporations are demanding the privatization of some public service. The biggest prize of all is the privatization of Social Security. The biggest obstacle to privatizing Social Security is a well-run, well-funded Social Security system. Presidential candidates have addressed the issue of funding. For example, according to the New York Times, Governor Christie would reduce benefits, extend the retirement age, and eliminate some payroll taxes. Under his plan, the Social Security system would be insolvent by 2030. Senator Sanders would leave the retirement age alone, raise the cap on the payroll tax earnings to all earnings above $250,000 a year, and increase some benefits. His plan would result in Social Security being solvent through 2065. These are big differences and demand our attention. This is Frank Emspak for Workers Independent News.
Workers Independent News is brought to you by the American Federation of Teachers and its 1.6 million members working to reclaim the promise of public education, health care, and public services for our students, their families, and our communities. More information online at aft.org.
You've been listening to WIN, Workers Independent News. For more information, visit laborradio.org.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
Going to this battle, take my union gun. Gonna end this world of slavery for this war is one you're bound to lose. Are you fascist?
So since the passage of the ACA, I had thought, and I'm glad I'm wrong, but I had thought the whole push for single payer had taken kind of a backseat. That, you know, the scream, the call, the passion had kind of died down. I'm glad to see that I was wrong. Evidently in Chicago in a couple of weeks, there's going to be a big conference, a national conference to talk about a strategy to push the idea of a single payer healthcare plan here in the country. As I've been saying, Medicare for all seems reasonable, seems rational. Even if you just open it up and give me a public option to buy into it, that seems better than what we've got. Not that I'm completely against what we've got, but I'm still a single payer guy. And here to talk a little bit about the big conference coming up, I've asked Mark Dudzik. He is the national coordinator for the labor campaign for single payer healthcare. Mark, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, Rick, it's great to be with you today.
You know, so I look at this and I think a lot of my friends who are in the same camp that I'm in, I would have loved to have seen Medicare for all, the single payer system, or at the minimum, a public option. We didn't get those things, and I think most of my friends are going, okay, let's just fix what we've got because this has got to kind of be it. I'm glad to see you guys doing something.
Yeah, well, we have to do something because the current system continues to be unsustainable. You know, the ACA patched a few holes in the sinking ship, but it's not a long-term solution. You know, unions are still struggling to bargain and to hold on to decent health care benefits for their members, and in fact, in some ways, the ACA is making this even harder. And families are still struggling to buy and maintain health care. You know, they have the right to buy health insurance now, but they don't have the right to health care. So we got to finish the job and fight on to single payer. And more unions and other people are, you know, realizing that this is a moment to keep on fighting. And that's what we're going to be talking about in Chicago.
And I think Mark, I think you make an important distinction there because you have the right to get health insurance, not necessarily care.
Right.
And those are two very distinctly different things.
Oh, they sure are. And, you know, that's part of the problem with the Affordable Care Act. You know, it's structured to sort of continue this, the process where for-profit private insurers stand between the American people and their health care. So you have to choose a plan on an exchange or continue to negotiate or get a plan through your employment for healthcare, and they're all structured in a way that, you know, limits the liability of insurance companies. And, you know, the models that the ACA establishes for healthcare coverage, you know, are almost like a roadmap to the bottom. You know, they start with a platinum plan that's supposed to pay about 90% of your benefits, and they move down through gold and silver to bronze, which is supposed to pay about 60% of your healthcare costs. And any family that's ever faced a major medical crisis will know that 60% is not going to keep them out of bankruptcy and major financial disaster. So, you know, the system is, you know, generates inequality up and down, and we need to change it. We need to establish Medicare for all, make it a right for everybody in America from cradle to grave.
I'm right there with you. And at the end of this, I look at and I have this conversation with friends all the time. You look at what the right wing has been able to do with contraception. And we could just take that as just a little microcosm of what possibly down the road could happen if we're going to deny this bit of care because we've got this employer-based system that we've now got to worry about what this individual employer or this individual employer thinks. It limits the amount of healthcare or what people can get. And I got to be honest, I've never been a fan of the employer-based healthcare system, but that's just another one of those reasons where you go, I'm sorry, you should have no say in what kind of healthcare I get.
That's right. You know, it distorts working people's lives in so many ways. And you know, it's so easy for them to mess with our healthcare because we all get it, you know, through individual employers. So, you know, what's happening, you know, you walk down the street in a neighborhood and, you know, everybody has a different relationship to the healthcare system. It's very different from how we look at Social Security or Medicare. You know, somebody wants to mess with our Social Security, everybody's going to stand up because it's an issue that affects everybody at the same time. And that's, you know, that's how we have to look at healthcare. And that's, you know, that's how we're going to organize and win this fight is when people begin to see that this is a, you know, a movement, that we need a social movement to take on the medical industrial complex that profits from.
Let me ask you this, Mark.
Health.
What do you say to the person who goes, you know, I'm fine. I've got health care. I work hard. I play by the rules. I got my health care. It's for those lazy people that, Mark, that you're out there fighting for, those ones who won't work. What do you say to people? Because I got to be honest, I struggle with that conversation because they're so decided on their point that, you know, I earned this. This is mine. It's something, it's not a right. It's something that you earn. How do you change that perception?
Well, you know, I think you just sit and people will convince themselves if they're, you know, if they start talking to you about it. I mean, ask them about their own family. Every family has somebody who doesn't have health insurance, who deserves it, you know, who's hardworking. Every family, you know, has an elderly relative who's cutting their pills in half at the end of the month to meet their budgets. I mean, these are tragedies that no civilized society tolerates except for this country. There's nowhere else in the world that has the industrial resources to provide healthcare for everybody that denies healthcare the way we do in 1,000 different ways. So,
we found that if you just talk to Americans about healthcare, almost everybody will agree it's got to be treated as a public good, the way we treat firefighting and libraries and education, that it's too complex an issue to sort of leave to the private sector, and to allow them to profit off of our ill health. We've got to publicly finance it. Those with the ability to pay have to pay for it, and we have to have it. It's a fundamental source of security in a civilized society.
I mean, it sounds all rational and sane to me, but I can't tell you how many people I know who have this belief that nothing that we, the people, do, nothing that the public sector does is right. Everything's got to be privatized because private good, public bad.
Well, that's the thing about single payer is all that the government is doing is paying the bills. They're collecting the money and paying the bills. And you know what? Government does that pretty darn well. Ask how many people have missed a Social Security check in the last 75 years. Those checks come out every month, like a time work.
Yeah, even when the Republicans are shutting down the government.
Right. Even when the Republicans are shutting down the government. So, the beauty with single payer, does not say that the government is going to come into the doctor's office and control, your healthcare decisions. This actually frees doctors up to treat you, and they won't have to call some insurance company bureaucrat on an 800 number in some South Asian country to get approval to properly treat you and prescribe medication for you. All that happens in single payer is what happens under Medicare right now.
But Mark,
your doctor treats you and the government pays the bill. Ask how many of these folks would give up their right to Medicare when they turn 65.
Good point. But Mark, the death panels, Sarah, kind of reviving that. Sarah Palin said they're death panels.
Yeah, we have death panels right now. 40,000 people a year die because they don't have proper access to health care in this country. The death panel is if you have no money, you die. People are dying of easily treatable things like diabetes. Our babies die at rates higher than in 35 other industrial countries. That's just criminal. That, a country that has a capacity to solve these problems lets people suffer and die for the sake of healthcare industry profits.
So let me ask you this, other than showing up to the big conference on October 30th through November 1st in Chicago, if you want to check out the website, laborforsinglepayer.org, the website, or just go to thericksmithshow.com, click on Mark Dudek's name, take you right there. What do we do? How do we get this? How do we get this pushed through? Because a lot of people I know are going, well, we got what we got. We'll fix what we got. That's a pipe dream. How do we get there?
Well, we get this the same way that we've built the labor movement. We've got to build a powerful movement to overcome corporate power. This isn't a question of coming up with smart ideas. This is it's a question of building power for working people. So, we've got to get our unions involved in this because unions are the only one of the few institutions left in this society that are independent of corporate control. We've got to get them to take this up as a survival issue. And then we got to build out into our communities and educate our communities and build alliances, reach out to small business and other potential allies and keep fighting. I think that, we need to make some breakthroughs at the state level to win some publicly financed universal health care systems in some states and then move that back to the national and, keep fighting until we win. We have no alternative, Rick. This is, the system is going to continue to decline. We can't continue to pay these kind of costs. People are losing things every time they go to the bargaining table in union negotiations. And, we're the lucky ones, the union folks. At least we get a voice in what happens to our health care on the job. Most people don't even have that. They just have to take whatever their employer gives them.
Yeah, whatever's been dictated. You're right. But here's the thing. And, you look at what's going on right now, and the unions seem to be, the union workers seem to be on the menu right now because you look at this tax that's coming around, I guess, I guess 2018, it comes into effect, right?
Yeah, well, they call it the Cadillac tax. We call it the Chevy tax because it's going to tax basic health care benefits that workers have fought for over the decades and not replace it with something better like a single payer system. So, this is driving concessions at the bargaining tables all across the country right now. It's a 40% tax on benefits that cost more than certain limits. And as people started to take a hard look at how this tax would play out, it's pretty clear that sometime over the next 10 years, basically every union healthcare plan is going to be subject to this tax because of the way healthcare benefits accelerate over time. And, employers are coming to the bargaining tables telling unions there is no way we're going to pay this tax. And we want the right to do anything that we need to do to cut your benefits in a way that avoids paying this tax. So it's becoming, a huge issue.
And a huge bargaining issue.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, I had someone explain to me the other day that maybe this is what brings down the employer-based system, because I'm still, kind of confused at how we ended up with this system and how we've accepted it to where if I get sick, I lose my job, I lose my health care. It doesn't make any sense. That I've always believed healthcare should be one of those things that, like cradle to grave, when you need it, it's there no matter what. But it's always been curious to me that we've always tied it to our jobs, that when we get sick, we lose the job and then the healthcare.
That's right. Yeah, you go on strike, you lose your healthcare. I mean, it's all these connections that never should be. I mean, it's just sort of kind of a quirk that, it ended up this way. During World War II, a number of companies instituted these programs to help recruit workers when they were really desperate for it. And then after World War II, there was a powerful movement that was trying to enact national health care in the 1940s. And a number of big employers like General Motors and stuff at the time came to unions and said, you know what, we'll give you guaranteed health care through your employment. You don't need to fight for health care, a national health care system. And, unions began to negotiate health care as a benefit rather than to fight for it as a right. And, for a number of years that worked out okay, but it's no longer working for working people. It's just unsustainable. So, a lot of unions that were really invested in the idea of, health care as part of a package of good union benefits realize now that, we got to take health care off the bargaining table. And more of them have come to that conclusion. The AFL-CIO has resumed calling for a Medicare for all solution to the healthcare crisis. This discussion over the Cadillac tax is putting a lot of unions back in the game about thinking about what to do next.
Right. And if you want to participate, I understand you guys over at laborforsinglepayer.org, you have a pledge that you want people to sign up for, right?
That's right. Just go to our website, laborforsinglepayer.org, sign up, we'll try to put you in touch with other people in your unions. We ask people to get their local unions involved, to then go to their national unions and talk to the leadership there. Some of the unions are doing a lot on this. A lot of them could be doing a lot more to be fighting for single payer for everybody in America. So we think it helps to revitalize the whole labor movement. If we fight for this right for health care for all, we begin to regain the moral authority to speak on behalf of everybody who works for a living in this country. So this is, this is part of a broader vision to rebuild this movement, to strengthen the rights for all working people.
It's a good place to start. Again, the website, laborforsinglepayer.org. We've got a link at thericksmithshow.com. Sign up on the pledge, and I'm sure you can sign up for emails and updates and stuff like that, right?
That's correct. We do we won't kill you with emails. We'll do about a monthly email to keep you involved and aware of what's going on. And, we welcome everybody's support.
Good stuff. Mark, I appreciate you taking a little time for us, telling us what's going on. And we'd love to have you come back and talk about the conference again, and maybe what came out afterwards as well.
Yeah, give me a call. I would love to talk about this, the Chicago conference.
Great deal. Month. Thanks so much, Mark. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Take care.
Mark Dudzek, he is the National for Labor Campaign for Single Payer Healthcare. Again, the website, laborforsinglepayer.org. The website, we've got a link at thericksmithshow.com. Quick break, right back with your thoughts. 1-888-520-RICK, 1-888-520-7425. This is The Rick Smith Show. For working people, come to talk.
Never shall fall. United, we stand. United, we stand. One and all. United,
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1983. That was the day that musician Merle Travis died. Known for his unique finger-picking guitar style, Travis wrote songs that captured the hard life of the coal miner. His songs drew from what he had seen growing up in Muhlenberg County, Kentucky. He was born in the town of Rosewood, the son of a coal miner. In 1947, Merle released a 4-record set, Folk Songs from the Hills. The album contained the song Dark as a Dungeon, what would become one of his most recognizable songs.
Come and listen, you fellers, so young and so fine, and seek not your fortune in the dark, dreary mines. It will form as a habit and seep in your soul till the stream of your blood is as black as the coal. It's dark as a dungeon and damp as the dew, where danger is double and pleasures are few.
Another song about the life of a miner was this song, titled 9-Pound Hammer.
It's a long way to Harlan, it's a long way to Hazard, just to get a little brew, just to get a little brew. When I'm long gone, just make my tombstone out of number 9 coal, old number 9 coal.
Perhaps Travis's most famous song was this one, 16 Tons.
Now some people say a man's made out of mud, but a poor man's made out of muscle and blood. Muscle and blood, skin and bones, a mind that's weak and a back that's strong. You load 16 tons, and what do you get? Another day older and deeper in debt. St. Peter, don't you call me, cause I can't go. I owe my soul to the company.
Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Chances are, when you took a shower this morning, an AFSCME member made sure that water was clean. When you drove to work, an AFSCME member maintained the road. When you rode an elevator, an AFSCME member inspected it. I'm David Philman, Executive Director of AFSCME Council 13, the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees. AFSCME members enforce regulations, keep prisoners behind bars, take care of patients, protect the environment, and more. The work isn't glamorous. The salaries aren't high, but AFSCME members serve the public in every aspect of our daily lives. Chances are, you'll never see that AFSCME member working in a sewage plant, diving underwater to repair a bridge, or answering a 911 call. But aren't you glad they do? For more information, visit AFSCME13.org. We are AFSCME.
Don't really care about the economy. Don't care much about democracy. I'm a member of the GOP, trying to form a plutocracy. But if I can just bamboozle you, and you'll share my narrow point of view, what a wonderful world.
Yes, what a wonderful world it would be indeed. If we could just continue to sell you on more for the very wealthy and less for working people. You don't need health care. You don't need that stinking health care. We can just pay or die, right? If you were smart enough, if you worked hard enough. It's amazing to me. It's amazing how we fall for this stuff. It really is. Just blows my mind. Just is what it is. Anyway, some interesting polling numbers out today. You look at President Obama, his approval rating has climbed above 50%, first time since, I think, September of 2013. His number's up to 51%. That's a good thing, up 6 points from July. This has got the right wing kind of crazy because they, as Frank Luntz tweeted out, no president has handed off to his party a victory if his approval ratings were below 50%. So you expect a lot of attacks against Obama very soon because you got to take Obama down too, along with Hillary or Bernie or the rest of them. Some interesting numbers coming out, though, with Hillary. Hillary, a huge lead right now in the most recent Morning Consult poll. They point out that Hillary has a 56-24 lead over Bernie Sanders. And O'Malley has 1%, Webb had 1%, Chafee 1%, and somebody else had 6%. I'm not sure who somebody else was. Didn't see him at the debate, or her. Could be a her, for all I know. If you look at the head-to-head matchups with Hillary and Jeb, exclamation point, Hillary wins 46-37 with 7% of the vote going, I don't know. In a direct head-to-head with Hillary and Marco Rubio, Hillary beats him even more handily, 47-35 with 8% not quite sure. Interesting, though, with Hillary and the Donald, 44-41, Hillary in the lead with 14% going, I don't know. So interesting, very, very interesting. And the latest Wall Street Journal NBC poll also kind of shows the same thing. Hillary Clinton with 49%, up from 42%. Sanders down from 35% to 29%. Joe Biden down from 17 down to 15. Without Biden, Clinton up 58-33 over Sanders. And you look at it just from September, the September poll, that has expanded for Hillary. So you could say, I thought, Sanders did a great job in the debate. I thought he was the one that I wanted to hear the message. The people being polled, not buying that so much. The lead is expanding. So there you go. Will Joe Biden jump in? I don't see how he can at this late date, but you never know. You never know. It'll be interesting to see. As I understand, the countdown is going to happen here very soon. Joe is supposed to announce. Now, on the other side of the aisle, the fun side, a Monmouth University poll. They've got Trump with 28%, Carson 18%, Cruz 10%, Fiorina and Rubio with 6%. Jeb, exclamation point, 5, and then Huckabee and Paul with 4, Christie with 3, and everybody else with less than 1. So again, whoever everybody else was. Interestingly enough, of the polling data, the one thing that got pulled out is Jeb, exclamation point, his favorability ratings tanking. Had been 44%, now down to 37%. So falling, and it is what it is. I do find it interesting in that poll that they came up with. 50% of the group said the National Party is doing a bad job representing them in Congress. 41% saying good. And I'm going, who are these 41%? Looking at Congress going, yep, doing a good job there. All right. Looking at their party going, yep, nice. 42% said they were very or somewhat satisfied with Republican leadership. Really? Who are these people? 57% said they were very or somewhat dissatisfied. 39% said that the conservative scorched earth caucus, they should have more power. 25% said they have too much. 21% said just right. On the Paul Ryan front, fill the speaker spot. 45% said yes, we want Paul Ryan, be a good guy. 13% said he would not, and 42% don't give a rat's behind. So interesting. I mean, the numbers, very, very strange. But to me, it's all part of that cavalcade of crazy over there on the right. And if you looked over the weekend, you saw the Trump and Jeb exclamation point with the back and forth over W, which I got to be honest with you. Jeb can't win this. At some point, he's got to back away and just say, you know what, he's not my brother. Really, I mean, you're not going to convince people that W kept us safe. It's just not going to happen. I think most people remember. And I checked the calendar. The election of 2000 happened in November of 2000. The Supreme Court made that decision sometime in 2001 on January 20th. I saw George W. Bush put his hand on the Bible, take the oath. And I know January is before September, so he had to be president. It had to be there. It just had to be. So on that day, not so much on the safe side of it. After that, you could make the argument then, some kind of renewed vigor, some kind of interest. I don't know. But this idea that he kept us safe. No, not on that day. And you can go through and we can rehash all of the Bush, of the W years. Not thrilled with that. It was a failure. It was bad for the country. It was bad for the economy. It was bad for working people. And look, we got into a bunch of misadventures that have cost us trillions of dollars. That's reality. And what I find interesting is W is out on the stump, well, not on the stump. He's out on the fundraising tour, trying to raise money for the brother. And I guess in Denver, he was doing one of these, private, with 100 or so big donors, kind of a secret thing, and came out with kind of a big statement that grabbed headlines. Said he doesn't like Ted Cruz. Just doesn't like the guy. Just don't like the guy. Bad guy. Don't like him. So poor Ted Cruz, and I guess part of it had to be with, as it was reported that, Cruz has been, buddying up with Trump, because at some point, if Trump gets it, Cruz might be the VP, which would just be great, wouldn't it? But I did find the interesting part of the whole story with W and the political fundraising, saying that he's not going to be out and around very much. You're not going to see W out too much for his brother. He emphasized he's not doing the campaign trail, public events, not doing it. He'll do some supportive thing, wants to be helpful. He'll do the backroom fundraising deals, but you're not going to see him out glad-handing and kissing babies. Not going to happen. And I guess that's a good thing. Helps the country heal. Just is what it is. Let's take a quick break. When we come back and talk a little bit about the story out in Bethlehem. Looks like a contractor going to be going to jail for cheating workers out of their wages. Not surprising. Also going to find out what's going on with the budget. Quick break, right back.
Seems to me I could live my life a lot better than I think I am. I guess that's why they call me. They call me the working man.
Making the blue blood see red. The Rick Smith Show.
We now know there will be no more drilling in the Arctic during the Obama presidency. This one's done.
Obama administration shuts down Arctic oil drilling.
This is beyond hypocrisy. I'm not even sure what to call it.
Accountability may be coming for Exxon's climate deception.
The time, I think, has come to move to a new generation of technology.
Big changes ahead for the auto industry. Plus, conservatives out, liberals in Canada. So what about that whole Keystone XL pipeline thing?
Yeah, what about it? All of those stories and more straight ahead from bradblog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comments.
We'll be fine with the environment. We can leave a little bit, but you can't destroy businesses.
Okay, well, thank you for leaving a little bit of the environment, Donald Trump. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, a lot of, frankly, really huge stories today. We have just learned that the Liberals have taken over the Canadian government, throwing out the Conservative Party and Prime Minister Stephen Harper. This could have a huge effect on the Keystone XL pipeline and the Energy East pipeline, both controversial and set to ship dirty tar sands oil from Alberta all over the place. I guess it remains to be seen now what will happen with a new Liberal government in charge up in Canada.
Yeah, we should hopefully have more on that in our next episode, but it very possibly could put an end to the nearly 10-year pro-oil agenda of the Harper administration.
Yes, underline the word possibly, given that just days ago, the co-chair for the Justin Trudeau campaign, he's the head of the Liberals, had to resign because of his ties to TransCanada and the oil industry. So a lot of questions, but an encouraging sign, perhaps, at least, that Harper is gone. All right. What other earth-shaking news do you have for us today, Desi Doyen?
Well, accountability may be coming for Exxon. We've been telling you about the blockbuster investigation revealing that Exxon executives knew about the dangers of burning fossil fuels in causing global warming as early as 1977, but Exxon copied the tobacco industry and spent millions of dollars funding front groups to deceive the public and policymakers about the scientific evidence. Now, Congressman Ted Lieu and Mark DeSaulnier, both Democrats from California, have asked the U.S. Justice Department to investigate Exxon in the same way the Justice Department investigated and successfully convicted Big Tobacco on racketeering charges 10 years ago for conspiring to deceive the public. Congressman Lieu explained on the broadcast that it isn't just that Exxon remained silent on what they knew.
They were taking affirmative steps both in what they said, who they funded and actions they took to push back against climate change science. And keep in mind, they internally took actions to take advantage of global warming. So this is beyond hypocrisy. I'm not even sure what to call it.
What the congressman was referring to there was the fact that not only did Exxon know, but they tried to take advantage of the fact that the Arctic would be melting, and hey, makes it easier to drill up there in the Arctic without all of that ice.
Speaking of the Arctic, another setback for big oil in the Arctic. On Friday, the Interior Department announced that it has halted all auctions of leases to drill for oil and gas in the U.S. waters off the coast of Alaska due to the lack of interest from the oil industry due to slumping global oil prices. Interior Department also announced it will not renew or extend any existing leases in the Arctic, and that includes leases held by Shell Oil, which abandoned its efforts in the Arctic last month after getting disappointing results.
And after getting approval from the Obama administration to do it in the first place, I am glad they have flip-flopped now, so to speak. So good for them. About time.
Meanwhile, a big shift underway in the auto industry after automaker Volkswagen was caught red-handed cheating on U.S. emissions tests. Tesla CEO Elon Musk suggested this may signal the end of the internal combustion engine.
What the Volkswagen is really showing is that we've reached the limit of what's possible with diesel and gasoline.
It appears Volkswagen agrees. VW executives have announced, quote, the future is electric, and in a statement they say they will now focus their product range and core technologies on building long-range, all-electric and plug-in hybrid cars across all of their brands. And it's not just Volkswagen. Swedish automaker Volvo is also going electric, saying, quote, we believe the time has come for electric vehicles. Volvo announced it will offer plug-ins or hybrid versions of every model it sells within 4 years.
And that comes on the heels of BMW saying that every single car they make will be electric in some form or another over the next 10 years.
Plus, Japanese automaker Toyota says it will make virtually all gasoline engines from its product line extinct by 2050, focusing on hybrids and electrics and hydrogen fuel cell vehicles.
Nothing but good news today. For more on all of those stories and the ones we couldn't get to, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
Changes. Turn and face the strain. Changes. Don't wanna be a richer man. Changes.
Saving work in America, one show at a time. The Rick Smith Show.
Reach up for the sunrise. Put your hands in to the big sky. You can touch the sunrise. Feel a new day enter your life.
So, district attorney out in Bethlehem, I think he's the Northampton County district attorney there, John Morganelli. He has charged Salkuis and White with a misdemeanor, and that's all he can. That's all he's allowed to by law. He's charged them with violating Pennsylvania's Construction Workplace Misclassification Act. Basically, misclassifying them, screwing them out of unemployment, workers' comp, probably minimum wage, a whole bunch of other things. And all they can charge him with is a misdemeanor. Little slap on the wrist. Don't do it again. Also going to charge one of the folks with perjury, which is a felony, in addition to the misdemeanor. So it'll be interesting to see where that goes. But you got to wonder, how often does this stuff happen in the construction industry? We see it run rampant in trucking. We see it run rampant in other industries. What about construction? Here to talk a little bit about it, our good friend Abe Amoros, legislative director here in Pennsylvania for the Laborers International Union of North America. Abe, thanks for taking time for us.
You're welcome, Rick. Thanks for having me.
So I look at this story and when I was fresh out of high school, I worked as a subcontractor, swinging a hammer, building houses, all under the table, which was highly illegal. Didn't know it back then, but highly illegal. And as I explained to my daughter, I gave it up when somebody shot me in the foot with a nail, and I found out that I'm on my own.
Yeah, it's rather unfortunate that you don't have the necessary safeguards in place to make sure that the workplace safety is guaranteed, and that you have rights when you're injured. And of course, when you're that young, Rick, everybody likes to have a job, and it sounds a little, glamorous to be working under the table, or, something sneaky, getting one over on the government. But the truth of the matter is there are not enough safeguards in place that protect our workers. And it is a shame that these violations render nothing more than misdemeanors with very little teeth. Now, I'm glad that there's a felony, involved in this, because that makes it much more severe. But the bottom line is workers continue to be unprotected in many instances. And unfortunately, just like you said, when you get hurt, you're on your own. And that's just not the way it should be. Construction workers deserve a lot better than that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I learned very young. I mean, it was one of those things, you go learn a skill, you'll work here and you'll do this. I remember at the end of the day, the guy handed me a couple of bucks. I go, what's this? He goes, your pay for the day. They actually paid me by the day. And like I said, when the guy wasn't my fault that someone shot me in the foot with a nail gun. The guy was like, I don't know what to tell you. You're on your own.
Right. Exactly. Which is unfair. It's a complete exploitation of the worker. It's shiesty. It's getting around people, getting around on the government, getting around on not paying taxes, and really taking from the bottom to pad the top. That's the real problem. And it happens every day, unfortunately. And until it's taken more seriously, you're just going to hear more examples of exploitation, Rick. I mean, it's more common than people think.
But what do you say to the person, Abe, who says, well, you're just working for the day's pay and, there's nothing wrong with this. This is a harmless crime. It's a victimless crime because the worker got paid, the employer, got the work done. Everybody should be happy.
Well, what they do is they exploit the fact that people are living under hard times. And a construction worker who hasn't worked in 2 weeks, he's going to be hungry for even 1 day's worth of pay. It's complete exploitation. What we need to tell people is this is no way to treat workers. Workers deserve a guarantee that when they go to work, they're going to be taken care of. They're going to be in a safe environment. Somebody's going to be responsible for them. There's going to be accountability in place. Their wages are going to be fair wages, because chances are, Rick, that guy was probably getting peanuts on the dollar, man. He wasn't even being paid what he's worth, what he deserves. I don't know what his skill set might have been, but you know what? They probably were paying him way under scale to begin with because they're shiesty. And this is how they make these obscene profit margins on the backs of workers, exploiting them, knowing that they're hurting out there, knowing that they're having a heck of a time making their car payments, their mortgage payments, they want to buy clothes for their kids to go to school. So it's complete exploitation. And this is wrong. And I'm so sick of people defending that as capitalism, as the free market. No, that's not what capitalism and the free market is all about. It's not about exploiting the workers. It's making sure that the workers have the necessary tools in place to maximize profits by doing right and doing things correctly, so then you can maximize profit margins. But today, unfortunately, it's the other way around.
Now, I wish, I got to be honest, I wish that was my definition of capitalism, what you laid out, because that's good. I like that. Sadly, what I believe is capitalism really is about screwing the workforce, is about slitting your neighbor's throats for pennies. That's what true laissez-faire capitalism is. It's about hooray for me and the hell with you, Abe.
Yeah, well, we got to push back on that, Rick, because, that may be the classic definition, but it shouldn't be the definition. And unfortunately, we put up with it. I have friends who are MBAs, okay? These are ruthless, unscrupulous people. And that's even taught in the classroom, that people are expendable, that the little guy is not worth looking out after or investing in. They actually teach that crap in these MBA classes, which really is abhorrent to me, and it's so offensive. And yet, they get away with it. And unfortunately, we buy into that. We have a lot of ham and eggers, Rick, want to be out there, even if they get a paycheck after 2 days, and if they get paid cash under the table, they're going to take it. Who can blame them? They have families. They're hungry too. And heck, they may even want a beer, a cold one right after their shift is over. Who can blame them for that, for working so hard?
Yeah, I'm with you.
But you know what? We got to kick that. We got to push back. Really.
Absolutely. And we need to hold these folks accountable. And I got to be honest, when I saw the story, I'm going, wow. Someone was paying attention while our government is being shut down. And, while we're doing these things and we don't have the money for inspectors and all that other stuff, if we get down that road, this kind of stuff then runs even further off the rails and more rampant. which, again, another reason why I think we need to have a budget in sometime in this lifetime.
Yes, that's right, Rick. And you know what? Talks have stalled. My understanding of being in the Capitol this week is that only Republicans are talking to each other now, so they're negotiating with themselves. Now is the time to really take a really serious look at whether or not we're going to have a budget in 2015, or if this thing is going to drag out past the holidays into the new year. I know the school districts are squawking, human service agencies are squawking, everybody's squawking, everybody's losing points in polling. So, this is the time where real serious compromise has to take place. I don't know what's going to give, man, because liquor is not the solution. Selling state stores and putting thousands of people out of work is not the right thing to do. I don't think that this public pension reform that the Republicans are pushing has any serious traction either, because, it's just going to hurt people moving forward. And what really angers me is everybody knows where the governor stands, Rick. Everybody knows what he believes in, and he's digging in his heels. Some may say that he's being way too stubborn. But here's the thing, man. I don't hear a plan B from the Republicans.
Right.
I don't hear anything from these guys. I don't think they're the ones that are taking this seriously. And, this governor, I don't think really cares about being reelected, Rick. I think he cares more about doing the right thing than reelection. That may make for bad politics. But in terms of policy, he's not going to change, man. It's just not going to happen. So these Republican lawmakers better get used to the fact that they're not going to be able to push this guy around. He's not your typical politician. And he's accustomed to getting his way in the boardroom as a successful businessman. And these guys better wake up and realize they're not dealing with an average politician here.
Yeah, and what they're doing is, I think even worse than nothing. They're showing their true priorities and going after attacking workers. Let's go past the paycheck deception bill. Let's go after this. I guess the stalking thing is going to come up again.
That's right, Rick. I mean, there was talk that it might even come up today, and that there was going to be an amendment offered in the state Senate. Of course, it'll have to go back to the House for concurrence. And this is the type of mischief that takes place when there's a budget impasse. Well, we can't get the budget done, so let's try to pick on something else. Oh, I have an idea. Let's go after workers. This paycheck deception thing was nothing more than an effort by Senator Scott Wagner from York County to smoke out Senator John Rafferty, who's running for Attorney General. This has all kinds of just dirt all over it. I mean, there's a ton of dirt under these fingernails, Rick. And it's no coincidence that the following day, Senator Scott Wagner endorsed Rafferty's opponent, State Representative Todd Stevens, for Attorney General. So, this is just politics at its worst. Now, the good thing is with the paycheck deception bill is that it's going to go to the House, and there's talk as to whether or not it's going to go to the State Government Committee or the Labor and Industry Committee. We're hoping that it goes in the Labor and Industry Committee because the chairperson there is a lot more reasonable than the fellow who's in charge of the State Government Committee, who's Representative Daryl Metcalf from Butler County. So we shall see which committee this lands in. But the truth of the matter is there are going to be several amendments offered. That doesn't make it a good bill. It gets watered down, and it might be an exercise of futility. And we're urging everyone just to vote no on it. We're confident that there are enough Republicans who will see that this bill has absolutely no merit, no place in Pennsylvania right now. And you know what? I mean, it goes pretty far, Rick. I mean, it's not just about political dues, but it's about organizing as well. It's about paying legislative directors like me, to go out there and work on behalf of working people and advocate for them. I mean, it's not just a black and white issue here. It has all kinds of ramifications and complexities that need to be examined. The bottom line is Wagner doesn't like teachers. He doesn't like SEIU. He doesn't like AFSCME. So what does he do? He goes out there and he tries to smoke out a guy that's running for Attorney General. So then he could go to Republican State Committee and say, this guy's not with you. He's not a true conservative, and he's looking for your vote. It's politics at its worst. And I'm glad to say that we feel confident that we could stop it in the House. And furthermore, I'm going to go out a little further and say that I do believe that the governor would veto it. This is not something he wants to see. And our sources have said that this is a bill that he would really, really relish in terms of vetoing to make an example out of, because this is just wrong, Rick. We got bigger things to do, more important things to do in Pennsylvania, rather than a paycheck protection bill that does absolutely nothing but muzzle.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know, pass a little budget or something.
There you go. Do something. Throw the people of Pennsylvania a bone here, man. I mean, this is just ridiculous. We're approaching the 110-day mark here. I mean, this is just absurd. And there's been no movement. And the conversations, I mean, people are getting tired of hearing, yes, the conversations are taking place. These conversations, Rick, should have been taking place back in February.
Yep.
In February. And I do believe that legislators should not get paid until this is resolved. And I know that there have been some in the Democratic House caucus who have foregone their salaries until this is resolved. And I admire that. But it should be across the board. There should be legislation to that effect, that nobody gets paid until this is solved. This is your job, man. I don't care if you're a part-time legislator or not. You're elected to be a full-time representative, even though you choose to be a part-time legislator, which, let's be honest, Rick, a lot of these guys are part-time legislators. They have other careers and things.
Yep.
They're insurance salespeople, or they have their accounting businesses. Many of them are lawyers with practices on the side. It's time to put that stuff aside and dig in. And nothing should take precedence over this budget right now. Nothing.
I'm at the point where it's time to term limit them. We don't need to pass term limits. It's time for us to exercise our right to term limit and vote them out.
Right. That's it, Rick. There are term limits every 2 years in the House and every 4 years in the Senate. People need to start taking this seriously. I mean, are we to the point where we need to look at ourselves in the mirror and say, have I done enough in terms of political discourse to talk to my friends, my family, my neighbors, the people I go to church with, the people I see at the supermarket about this? I mean, am I that enraged that I become an activist and say, if you don't like what this guy's doing or that gal's doing, get rid of them? Because that's what they fear. They fear votes. They fear that. They don't fear anything else. They don't care about the big checks being written by unions or corporations as much as the votes. Now, those big checks from corporations and unions, they help candidates. But the bottom line is, man, the only thing that matters is votes. Everything else walks. So, and everybody carries the same weight. I mean, the richest guy's vote matters as much as the poorest guy's vote at the ballot. They all count the same. And I think we need to start waking up and stop being so politically illiterate ourselves. Look in the mirror and say, did I have something to do with this by electing this guy? I mean, this guy's not doing anything for us. That gal's not doing anything for us. Let's take a hard look at ourselves sometimes too, because, man, we're hurting right now, Rick. We're really hurting. The political system is really in trouble right now.
And this is why November 3rd is so very important, and we got to get out and vote. Just that simple. But, Abe, I appreciate you taking some time for us, giving us the update from the Hill there. I'll look forward to talking to you again.
You got it, Rick. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Let's take a quick break. Right back. 1-888-520-RICK, 1-888-520-7425. This is The Rick Smith Show.
Controversial, thought-provoking, opinionated. Rick Smith.
House Speaker John Boehner gave up his position because he couldn't stand the job anymore. Next in line was Representative Kevin McCarthy, who started running for the job but quickly backed off. Representative Paul Ryan says he's thinking about taking the job, even though he doesn't want it. What's at work here is the crazy caucus. At one level or another, nearly all Republican House members belong, but the caucus is driven by about 50 hyper-crazies who believe that the greatest problems facing our country are Hillary Clinton's emails, Planned Parenthood, the existence of public services, and the, quote, hordes of Mexicans who sneak into our country so they can vote for Democrats. It's the job of the House Speaker to try leading these mad dogs to an occasional bit of sanity. Who really wants to do that, or even thinks it's possible? Well, several of the mad dogs themselves say they should be put in charge. Daniel Webster says he's available. Not the smart guy who compiled the dictionary, but a Tea Party bozo from Florida. Bill Flores, a little-known Tea Party know-nothing from Texas, says he would unite the House by getting all the members to, quote, spend enough time on our knees praying for each other. That's silly, but the idea of keeping lawmakers on their knees is appealing. Mike Pompeo of Kansas, a prince of right-wing pomposity who was elected by the billionaire Koch brothers to be their personal representative in Washington, says he's ready to lead the House toward a coke-headed plutocracy. This is Jim Hightower saying, that's pathetic. But wait, we have another surprising choice. It's a little-known fact, but the Speaker of our House of Representatives does not actually have to be a member of Congress. So why don't we choose someone like a kindergarten teacher, a minimum wage worker, an organic farmer, or a circus ringmaster to run the show? Or maybe a group psychologist is what the place needs.
What do the corporate powers from Wall Street to Walmart have in common? They hate the Hightower Lowdown. You can see why at www.hightowerlowdown.org.
From the United Nations, this is your World in 2 Minutes. I'm your host, Luke Vargas, with the Talk Radio News Service. A border fence being constructed by Hungary along its border with Serbia is complete, effectively sealing off one entry route used by Syrian and other asylum seekers trying to reach Europe. Slovenia is now recording a major uptick in migrant arrivals, including 5,000 on Monday alone. The country said it will cap arrivals at 2,500 per day, but it's hard to change the weather. Slovenia is now blaming Croatia for letting an unsustainable number of migrants pass through their shared border. Secretary of State John Kerry heads to Germany this week to meet with Israeli government officials and later to Jordan for meetings with Palestinian officials as fighting continues to flare up between the two parties. 34 Palestinians and 8 Israelis have been killed in recent weeks in a series of freak attacks. There have been incidents in the Palestinian West Bank, including an attack at the supposed site of Joseph's tomb in Nablus, but the majority of concern centers on Jerusalem and one of the city's holiest and most central of sites, the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Palestinians allege their already restricted access to the holy site is being further limited as Jewish groups gain greater access. Israel has rejected calls from France for UN security personnel to guard the site and lessen tensions. John Kerry, meanwhile, trying to stake out a reasoned position in the middle of a heated issue, admits something has to change.
In my conversations with the Prime Minister, as well as with King Abdullah and the Foreign Minister of Jordan, they have expressed a desire to try to see this process be able to find a way of making certain that everybody is clear about what is happening with respect to the Temple Mount.
For more global news headlines, visit talkradionews.com.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
We need to stand united, for undivided we shall never fall. Remember all, we need to trust in and then forever call our brothers and our sisters, and all you and I you win. You and I.
Real quick, here's one of those. Pennsylvania's not alone in being backwards. I look to Tennessee, where this just blows my mind. One of the Tennessee representatives wrote an op-ed in one of the newspapers there against the idea of studying what paid sick days would do for constituents in the state of Tennessee. She's obviously dead set against the idea. In fact, she said that it would harm business and it would harm workers and it would be bad. It'd be bad for Tennessee. And I'm going, wait a second. Hold on. Wait. It's not a luxury. It shouldn't be a luxury for workers to have a day off when they get sick. It shouldn't be a luxury if their kids get sick that they don't have to worry about losing their job, that they can get a day to go, you know what, I need something. Or if a family member gets sick, that they get some type of paid leave. I've been talking about this for years, but it's interesting to me that you have the Republican Party dead set against it. And why is it, I don't understand why working people would even consider voting for a Republican Party that doesn't have working people issues on their mind at all, other than at destroying them. That's just, it's just kind of shocking to me. But I guess maybe the guns, maybe that's what it is. I don't know, but don't get sick, man. don't need to take a day off. Nuts. Let's take a quick break. Right back. Stick around.
Just make us be brave, make us play nice, let us be together tonight.
Thought-provoking, intelligent conversation with a heart. The voice of the working class, Rick Smith. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to thericksmithshow.com. If you've missed any portion of the program, you can download the podcast at thericksmithshow.com.
You're listening to WIN, Workers Independent News, a production of Diversified Media Enterprises. I'm Doug Cunningham. UAW Fiat Chrysler workers are voting Tuesday and Wednesday on the new tentative labor contract covering some 40,000 workers. It's a better contract than the one that these workers rejected, and it would be historically very unusual if this second vote didn't accept the agreement. Lower wage tier workers who have 4 years on the job will have the full traditional UAW wages by the end of this 4-year deal. Lower tier workers with less seniority will see their hourly base wages rise by more than $8 an hour over the 4-year contract. The UAW says this deal also includes a $5.3 billion investment in U.S. auto plants and a moratorium on outsourcing. Even if Fiat Chrysler workers approve this labor contract, the UAW still has to get agreements at both Ford and GM. Teamsters negotiators will try again to reach a new labor contract that the 6,000 union truckers hauling cars can approve. The car haulers overwhelmingly rejected the first tentative deal. The National Master Automobile Transporters Agreement covers thousands of car haulers in 39 locals. Workers voting down the first tentative contract felt it was a concessionary contract. In a video explaining the deal that was rejected, Teamsters leadership said it was a difficult negotiating environment, and the proposed contract reflected marketplace realities. The union called it a modernized contract that was geared to rebuild union presence in the car hauling industry. In WIN's news commentary, our executive producer Frank Emspak deals with the problems in the U.S. retirement system and the very different solutions proposed by two presidential candidates.
The problems faced by retirees dependent on private pension plans made the news last week. Most Americans have little in the way of saving, so corporate irresponsibility places even more pressure on the Social Security system. Every day, corporations are demanding the privatization of some public service. The biggest prize of all is the privatization of Social Security. The biggest obstacle to privatizing Social Security is a well-run, well-funded Social Security system. Presidential candidates have addressed the issue of funding. For example, according to the New York Times, Governor Christie would reduce benefits, extend the retirement age, and eliminate some payroll taxes. Under his plan, the Social Security system would be insolvent by 2030. Senator Sanders would leave the retirement age alone, raise the cap on the payroll tax earnings to all earnings above $250,000 a year, and increase some benefits. His plan would result in Social Security being solvent through 2065. These are big differences and demand our attention. This is Frank Emspak for Workers Independent News.
Workers Independent News is brought to you by the American Federation of Teachers and its 1.6 million members working to reclaim the promise of public education, health care, and public services for our students, their families, and our communities. More information online at aft.org.
You've been listening to WIN, Workers Independent News. For more information, visit laborradio.org.
Yes, it is all about the children, even after they're born. Rick Smith.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. So we've heard an awful lot about we need to be testing teachers. We need to evaluate so we can get rid of the bad ones, right? How many times have you heard this idiotic phrase? We need to get rid of all those bad teachers, because we're led to believe you can never fire a teacher, which is just ludicrous. But the right-wing message machine, amazing. Amazing at beating us constantly with the idea that, well, we need to be testing the teachers, and if students don't learn, it's all the teacher's fault. Never mind all of the ancillary problems society has, especially when you're talking about our urban centers. No, it's the teacher's fault. And I got to tell you, this obsession, this fetish we have with this data-driven education, something quite concerning to me. And fortunately, teachers are standing up, fighting back, and saying, you know what? What is, and it's not our fault, which is why I've asked Amanda Kumulata. She is an art teacher down in Mississippi. Amanda, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you for having me.
So we in this country seem to be, obsessed with this idea that we have to evaluate teachers. In fact, here in Pennsylvania, part of the teachers' compensation is based on, in part, these evaluations, which I got to be honest, I'm not so thrilled with.
Oh, I'm not either. It goes back to Race to the Top when the Department of Education offered several $billions in funding and No Child Left Behind waivers to states in exchange for redesigning their evaluation processes. And those, one of the requirements for that was that they were heavily weighted on student test scores.
So you look at these test scores. I mean, what we've done is we've basically changed our education system to just be about these scores.
That's right. The idea on paper about teacher evaluations is that they're supposed to strengthen teaching, provide feedback to the teachers to help them, get better and provide support. But, it's really unclear what the real impact has been. We've, especially on working teachers who are still in the profession, and even on administrators, there's just very little data that tells us what the real impact has been.
Right, because we're not against, making sure that teachers are competent. We're not against the idea of making sure that they understand the material and that they're able to get that out. It's that these it's like the high stakes testing. I'm not anti-testing. As long as there's a diagnostic part of it where you take a test today, tomorrow you get the results, you learn what you didn't know. I'm not against that kind of a testing and evaluating, but this isn't that.
No, it's not. That we have reports coming out left and right that teachers are leaving the profession and that people are not going to school to be teachers anymore, and that morale has dropped with the teaching profession. And so I think it's important that we start looking at things that have changed within the profession in the last 10 years or so, and the teacher evaluation is a good place to start looking, because we're not talking about using it. It's not. We don't think it's working the way that you just described.
Right.
It's really unclear what the real impact is. And so, the Network for Public Education has sponsored a project to investigate this. We want to look at teacher evaluations over the past decade and how they've changed, what the impacts are being on classrooms and schools, and even how, students are being affected by these.
So that's an excellent question right there. I mean, the way it's been framed to me in the conversations that I've had over the years is it's like we were never testing or evaluating teachers in the past, that this is something new that we're doing now just to make sure that they're competent, or am I missing something?
Are you're saying that you think that people, the message was that before we weren't doing it and now we're doing it?
Yeah, I've had those conversations where, we need to have evaluations because we need to know if teachers are competent. It's been my understanding that, teachers have been evaluated for years. It's just,
yes, teachers, they have, and there's been, different ways that they've been evaluated. And I think there was more state and local control before Race to the Top on how to evaluate their teachers. Communities vary. What one community needs to do might be different from another,
right, in
that sense. But they've never been so heavily weighted just on student test scores as they are right now.
So what, in looking at this, for people like me who go, what I'm seeing happening in front of me, I don't agree with. I don't like this whole data-driven education system to where I've got 3 kids in public school, and this focus, this single-minded, simplistic focus on, don't worry, Mr. Smith, your kids will pass the PSSAs, this test at the end of the year that you won't get till next year, doesn't give me comfort.
Well, it's not all about, you cannot judge everything that is taught to a student on a test. I mean, the social skills, all those other things are not, that you can't get that from a number on a test. The data is important, but all of that other stuff is. And what happens, I think, when you focus so much on data is you end up narrowing down that curriculum. They don't get the arts that they need. Their social skills are end up being the last thing taught. And all you get is just a whole lot of test prep.
Right. You know,
and that's not good for kids.
I'm with you. You know, I'm concerned about where this all heads and where we go, because I think most people are like me. We think that, you know, education is like it was back when we were in school. You know, you took a test on a Friday, Monday, you got the test back. I didn't know this, I didn't know this, and you grow from that and you learn from that. That's not really what's going on. And I would argue the same thing with these teacher evaluations. It seems to me almost like punishing teachers and stifling creativity and you know, basically turning your profession into factory work.
It is. I agree with that. Especially, I think in some areas you're seeing like scripted lessons come through where the teacher literally they don't get to make decisions about the students that they know. They're handed a scripted lesson and expected to teach a script. And teachers don't want to do that. They want to be able to make professional decisions about the students that they know. They don't want someone that's sitting, you know, in their state capitol to hand them a scripted lesson. But that somebody that doesn't even know their students. And then they're evaluated on how well they taught that scripted lesson. I mean, the two things just don't go together.
Yeah, I'm with you. So what do parents, because look, I think as a parent, I want to know that the teacher is competent. I want to know that they have a strong command of the subject. And look, you know, we know our kids' teachers and we've met them, and you know, we feel very comfortable with them. My concern though is this whole this bizarre push towards numbers and this whole push towards evaluation, where I got to be honest, I wouldn't want to be a teacher today.
It's hard. You know, we've got to get teachers' voices into the policy making, and that's what, you know, this Network for Public Education survey is about. Because so many times, and I've participated in things like this myself, where I would work on a project and what ended up being published was not exactly what I had said. And so, you know, then you start questioning, well, who funded this? And, you know, what was the agenda behind this? And so where teachers' voices are not authentically being presented to policymakers. So the Network for Public Education survey on teacher evaluations is a chance for teachers to have their authentic voice be part of an actual report, because I personally really, really have a lot of faith in the Network for Public Education to honor what teachers have to say.
Right.
And as what you said about being a parent, yes, it's not that we don't want to be evaluated as teachers, and we want our parents to have faith in us, and we want to be able to say, this is what I can do for your child. But we also need to have teachers have their voice in this process, because we know what's going on. We are in those rooms with those kids. We have the best information to help make these policies. And I think if like with my own child, I would want to know that a teacher had a voice and it wasn't about getting her in trouble. It was about really improving what she can do for my own child.
And, you know, when I look at these, the way it's been put to me and the way that I've looked at the whole push for these evaluations, that's really what it seems like. It seems like we're trying to demean teachers and really start labeling them as bad and failures. And I got to be honest, like I said before, I wouldn't want to be a teacher. When my 13-year-old said she'd like to be one, I kind of cringed, just because I don't like the idea of where things are going. And it seems to me, and maybe you could correct me if I'm wrong, that it's about destroying our public schools and pushing us towards these private profitized kind of these charters or whatever, these schools that aren't in the hands of we the people.
I personally agree with you on that, because I think that when you create that perception of failure, and that these perfectly great teachers are failures based on a number, then you can erode the public's faith in public schools. And that's why we're talking about this, because the public's faith should not be eroded in our public schools.
No, I'm with you. You know, any horror stories in this? I mean, you know, because I talked to someone, you know, not too long ago who said, you know, they retired and got out of it because of, one, the attacks on pensions, two, the assembly line nature. I mean, the one teacher was explaining, you get 6 minutes to do this, 11 minutes to do this, and she was like, you know, I can't keep up with this.
Oh, I know, and you can't go. You don't have a restroom break. Sometimes you can't. it's the stress, and it's not just like a mental stress anymore. For some teachers that I talk to, that I hear that there's just the stress on their family is horrible because they have to take as much home as they get done in the school day. They don't get to do things on the weekends with their own children anymore. You know, it's mental and it's physically exhausting and it's stressful. And I worry about the many families of teachers, like their own children are suffering.
So what should we be doing? What should we parents be doing to support our teachers?
That is a very tough question. I think you need to talk to your children's teachers for sure and let them know that you support them. And you got to help them establish that two-way conversation, because a lot of teachers are afraid to say anything. But if we know we have the support of parents, I think that helps a lot.
Do you think that's a big part of this whole evaluation craze, is to silence teachers, to kind of put them back in their place?
Yes, they're afraid to speak up.
No, because I see it with my kids' teachers as well, when because we opt our children out of the PSSA tests. And, you can see that, when they give the spiel, don't worry, they'll pass the test. And I chime in, well, they're not taking the test. And they kind of look at me, sideways, like, oh my God, don't say that. The walls are listening. And I wonder often if that culture exists of fear, where you've got this kind of overarching intimidation of our teachers.
I will have to say that I work in a really great school, and I don't feel a culture of fear at my school, but I talk to teachers all over this country and I hear it. And that, people just send me messages on social media, just like they just need to vent to someone. And because I have kind of started speaking out publicly, they just come to me and tell me how stressed out they are, how afraid they are to speak up. And that's another thing I wanted to mention about that survey for the Network for Public Education, is that there's an option to remain anonymous with that. And so if you have something you need to say, you can do it anonymously.
So we want to be pushing teachers to the Living in Dialogue site. The link we've got at thericksmithshow.com. Just click on Amanda's names. It'll take you right there. That's a Survey Monkey survey for people to give their thoughts and to be very honest, right?
That's right.
And I highly suggest that folks do. And if you've got your kids' teachers, put it in an email and say, hey, you might want to participate in this. It's what I'm going to do, because I think the more we reach out to our teachers, the more conversations we have, and the more opportunities that we give to them to reach out, I think the better we're all going to be.
That's right. That's an excellent way to show your support too.
I just think it's what we should be doing, and how we take back our public schools. It's just what we have to do. Amanda, I appreciate you taking a little time, sharing your story, your experience. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
It was great talking with you, Amanda Kunlaba. She's an art teacher there from Mississippi. Again, I highly suggest go to thericksmithshow.com, click on Amanda's name, going to take you to the website, copy, paste that link, send it off to your kid's teacher and say, hey, you might want to take this. Have your voice heard. Good stuff. Let's take a quick break. Right back. Stick around.
All of my life I've searched for clarity. I have wrestled with two paths buried deep inside of me. I lost some rounds, been knocked around, felt my share of defeat. Yet somehow I've always managed to get back on my feet.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1983. That was the day that musician Merle Travis died. Known for his unique finger-picking guitar style, Travis wrote songs that captured the hard life of the coal miner. His songs drew from what he had seen growing up in Muhlenberg County, Kentucky. He was born in the town of Rosewood, the son of a coal miner. In 1947, Merle released a 4-record set, Folk Songs from the Hills. The album contained the song Dark as a Dungeon, what would become one of his most recognizable songs.
Come and listen, you fellers, so young and so fine, and seek not your fortune in the dark, dreary mines. It will form as a habit and seep in your soul till the stream of your blood is as black as the coal. It's dark as a dungeon and damp as the dew, where danger is double and pleasures are few.
Another song about the life of a miner was this song, titled 9-Pound Hammer.
It's a long way to Harlan, it's a long way to Hazard, just to get a little brew, just to get a little brew. When I'm long gone, just make my tombstone out of number 9 coal, old number 9 coal.
Perhaps Travis's most famous song was this one, 16 Tons.
Now some people say a man's made out of mud, but a poor man's made out of muscle and blood. Muscle and blood, skin and bones, a mind that's weak and a back that's strong. You load 16 tons, and what do you get? Another day older and deeper in debt. St. Peter, don't you call me, 'cause I can't go. I owe my soul to the company
Like
store.
what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Tales of American Political History with Clinton Porter Hackney.
This time we continue the tale of the beginning of America's involvement in the Vietnam War. It's somewhat difficult to define the first entry by the U.S. into the conflict between North and South Vietnam, but as early as 1945, during the cleanup of World War II, Ho Chi Minh was already creating problems by claiming that his Viet Minh Party was the rightful government of Vietnam. That year, a team of 7 U.S. Army officers was sent to Saigon to gather information on the situation there. One of the officers of the American team was Lieutenant Colonel Peter Dewey. When Dewey was driving to the Saigon airport for his flight back home, he came upon a roadblock guarded by Viet Minh soldiers. Dewey refused to stop, and he was immediately shot and killed. It was September 26, 1945. Join us again next time for more on the Vietnam story. This is Clinton Porter Hackney at cphackney.com.
Chances are, when you took a shower this morning, an AFSCME member made sure that water was clean. When you drove to work, an AFSCME member maintained the road. When you rode an elevator, an AFSCME member inspected it. I'm David Philman, Executive Director of AFSCME Council 13, the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees. AFSCME members enforce regulations, keep prisoners behind bars, take care of patients, protect the environment, and more. The work isn't glamorous, the salaries aren't high, but AFSCME members serve the public in every aspect of our daily lives. Chances are, you'll never see that AFSCME member working in a sewage plant, diving underwater to repair a bridge, or answering a 911 call. But aren't you glad they do? For more information, visit AFSCME13.org. We are AFSCME.
Up in the morning and out to school. The teacher is teaching the golden rule. American history is practical, man.
I don't know. It seems like the teacher's teaching 6 minutes here, 8 minutes there. Last year when my son was in class, I would go in once a week to help out with reading and math or whatever the teacher wanted help with that day. And I remember seeing on the board, there was, basically a checklist. We're going to do this from this time to this time, this from this time to this time. And that was the day, just scripted out entirely. And it's the regimentation that we've handed to our kids. And look, I don't think all kids learn in the same way. And I don't think that you can have a scenario where it's like an assembly line. As I've always said, I want my kids' classrooms to be like the Warren Buffett's kids' classrooms, or Obama's, or Rahm Emanuel's, or any of the wealth classes' kids. Kind of want the same thing for my kids that they get for theirs. That seems reasonable. I think all parents do. So when we're thrown this idea that we can have choice and that we're going to hold teachers accountable, we're going to evaluate to make sure that we got the best teachers. And look, the reality is, and no number's ever going to be the know-all, do-all. I've had teachers that I just thought were fabulous. They were the best thing on the planet, and I did really well in their classes. And I had teachers I thought were horrible, just miserable human beings that just could not stand, and I did poorly in their class. And guess what? I had friends who thought the opposite way of both. One that I loved, my best friend hated, did poorly. The one that I couldn't stand, my best friend thrived under. So this idea that we're going to make a scenario where the teacher's going to, this is what they're going to do, and we're going to have this script, and it's going to be an assembly line, and all kids are going to learn at the exact same pace. And we're going to just stamp out these little widgets, and they're all going to fill in the right bubble at the end of the year so that they all pass the test, and we can all pat ourselves on the back because now they all filled in the right bubble. It's kind of nuts. To me, education is more than just about if you can fill in the right bubble. It's about critical thinking. It's about this idea of imagination, creativity. But this obsession with accountability, it's just the end. It's not a means to the end. It's just the end. And it's kind of just bizarre to me. This whole thing seems to me, and maybe I'm wrong in this, but it just seems to me to be punishing teachers so that we have a huge churn, and ultimately punishes students. And I think, as Amanda pointed out, I was reading, I think, one of the similar articles where teacher morale is kind of at an all-time low. And you've got longtime teachers going, you know what? This is ludicrous. We're leaving, which is what the power structure wants, because they want little minions who are going to come in. They're going to work 90 hours a week for a year, 2, 3, 5, and then they're going to leave. And you're going to have a constant churn, no stability, no consistency, no professionalism. Just, we're going to get a lot of people who are really enthused, and then they're going to burn out. And it's kind of nuts. Because what we're doing is we're creating an environment where now it's not going to be just the kids cheating. It's going to be the teachers who are forced to cheat in this because we've tied their career, their professional, their development, they've tied everything to these bubble tests. This whole mentality of teaching to the test. I remember when I was in college, there was, and it happened all the time, but you heard people standing up, is this going to be on the test, Mr. So-and-so, professor? And I remember one professor I had said, what do you care if it's on the test or not? I hope you're getting more out of this class than just what's on the test. And to me, that always stuck with me, because this obsession with testing and this obsession with numbers, this kind of fetish that we have, isn't really teaching us. We knew what the bubble was. I was talking to my daughter the other day, and I was looking at her homework. I hate to say that now, being 48 years old, I have completely forgotten everything I learned in algebra. I know if I sat down, I could figure it out again. But when she showed me the problem, I haven't done an algebraic equation in 30 years. Completely forgotten all the rules. Not something that was on the front of my mind. I know I once knew it, and I knew I was pretty good at it one time. But now I completely forgot it all. And I'm looking at this like it's Greek, because basically it might as well be. Learning algebra in school wasn't about me knowing algebra. It was about me knowing that I can learn. And that, today, if I need to sit down and figure it out, I grab the book and I can begin to figure it back out. I can remember it. Maybe it starts to come back. But if you're not teaching kids how to do that and how to explore and how to be creative in their thinking, there's only one way. My son sits down and does a math problem. There's only one way to get to that answer. No, Dad, that's wrong. Whoa. That's there more than one way to get to the answer. No, there's only one way. And this kind of rigidity scares me, because we're not teaching kids to think creatively. And it's something that we better figure out how to stop, and quickly. Because at the end of the day, all of these evaluations, all of these high-stake tests, all of this stuff is not about our kids. It's about the profits. It's about the huge amounts of money that go from lower teacher salaries and lower pension costs and into higher testing costs. I'm telling you, not good. Not good. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about this whole evaluation fetish, what it's done to teachers in the classroom, and what it's done to the humanities. You got to wonder, when will they ever start testing that? I don't know, but we're going to find out. Let's take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
We now know there will be no more drilling in the Arctic during the Obama presidency. This one's done.
Obama administration shuts down Arctic oil drilling.
This is beyond hypocrisy. I'm not even sure what to call it.
Accountability may be coming for Exxon's climate deception.
The time, I think, has come to move to a new generation of technology.
Big changes ahead for the auto industry. Plus, conservatives out, liberals in Canada. So what about that whole Keystone XL pipeline thing?
Yeah, what about it? All of those stories and more straight ahead from bradblog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comments.
We'll be fine with the environment. We can leave a little bit, but you can't destroy businesses.
Okay, well, thank you for leaving a little bit of the environment, Donald Trump. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, a lot of, frankly, really huge stories today. We have just learned that the Liberals have taken over the Canadian government, throwing out the Conservative Party and Prime Minister Stephen Harper. This could have a huge effect on the Keystone XL pipeline and the Energy East pipeline, both controversial and set to ship dirty tar sands oil from Alberta all over the place. I guess it remains to be seen now what will happen with the new Liberal government in charge up in Canada.
Yeah, we should hopefully have more on that in our next episode, but it very possibly could put an end to the nearly 10-year pro-oil agenda of the Harper administration.
Yes, underline the word possibly, given that just days ago, the co-chair for the Justin Trudeau campaign, he's the head of the Liberals, had to resign because of his ties to TransCanada and the oil industry. So a lot of questions, but an encouraging sign, perhaps, at least, that Harper is gone. All right. What other earth-shaking news do you have for us today, Desi Doyen?
Well, accountability may be coming for Exxon. We've been telling you about the blockbuster investigation revealing that Exxon executives knew about the dangers of burning fossil fuels in causing global warming as early as 1977, but Exxon copied the tobacco industry and spent millions of dollars funding front groups to deceive the public and policymakers about the scientific evidence. Now, Congressman Ted Lieu and Mark DeSaulnier, both Democrats from California, have asked the U.S. Justice Department to investigate Exxon in the same way the Justice Department investigated and successfully convicted Big Tobacco on racketeering charges 10 years ago for conspiring to deceive the public. Congressman Lieu explained on the broadcast that it isn't just that Exxon remained silent on what they knew.
They were taking affirmative steps both in what they said, who they funded, and actions they took to push back against climate change science. And keep in mind, they internally took actions to take advantage of global warming. So this is beyond hypocrisy. I'm not even sure what to call it.
What the congressman was referring to there was the fact that not only did Exxon know, but they tried to take advantage of the fact that the Arctic would be melting, and hey, makes it easier to drill up there in the Arctic without all of that ice.
Speaking of the Arctic, another setback for big oil in the Arctic. On Friday, the Interior Department announced that it has halted all auctions of leases to drill for oil and gas in the U.S. waters off the coast of Alaska due to the lack of interest from the oil industry due to slumping global oil prices. Interior Department also announced it will not renew or extend any existing leases in the Arctic, and that includes leases held by Shell Oil, which abandoned its efforts in the Arctic last month after getting disappointing results.
And after getting approval from the Obama administration to do it in the first place, I am glad they have flip-flopped now, so to speak. So good for them. About time.
Meanwhile, a big shift underway in the auto industry after automaker Volkswagen was caught red-handed cheating on U.S. emissions tests. Tesla CEO Elon Musk suggested this may signal the end of the internal combustion engine.
What the Volkswagen is really showing is that we've reached the limit of what's possible with diesel and gasoline.
It appears Volkswagen agrees. VW executives have announced, quote, the future is electric. And in a statement, they say they will now focus their product range and core technologies on building long-range, all-electric and plug-in hybrid cars across all of their brands. And it's not just Volkswagen. Swedish automaker Volvo is also going electric, saying, quote, we believe the time has come for electric vehicles. Volvo announced it will offer plug-ins or hybrid versions of every model it sells within 4 years.
And that comes on the heels of BMW saying that every single car they make will be electric in some form or another over the next 10 years.
Plus, Japanese automaker Toyota says it will make virtually all gasoline engines from its product line extinct by 2050, focusing on hybrids and electrics and hydrogen fuel cell vehicles.
Nothing but good news today. For more on all of those stories and the ones we couldn't get to, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
Changes. Turn and face the strain. Changes. Don't wanna be a richer man. Changes.
A lot less education is going to take a big hit.
The biggest wave in school closings ever. Dozens of public schools are shutting down.
Lots of ugly cuts going on
State order
here.
is calling for the closing of half the schools.
Fewer teachers and fewer schools.
They got these fools closing schools and it can't be ignored. As if our future is a budget line we cannot afford. They got no money for schools, but they got funding for war. They say the conversation's closed. I say we break down the door. I say we stand up for our children, join together and fight. Because you can see that on the surface what they're doing's not right. They don't deserve.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Check out the website, thericksmithshow.com. Got the greatest email in the world during the break. Every talking point you could imagine when it comes to teacher evaluations. All in one very nicely well-scripted email from Brad, who says, I disagree with your assessment of evaluating teachers. We now need to know that they're capable of teaching our children. We need to hold them accountable. We need to weed out the bad ones, and we need to be paying the good ones more. He goes on to a whole bunch of other stuff, but really very nicely put bit of talking point. Like we're not already holding teachers accountable, like we never did that in the past, like we never knew that they were competent, none of that stuff. This is all brand new, all just wonderful stuff that's going to help us and our kids be better than we were. And I think most of us understand that's not really the goal, but it's a nice talking point. Anyway, here to talk a little bit about the evaluation process and what has come to be almost the norm now. I've asked Ryan Shaw. He's an assistant professor of music education there at Capital University out in Columbus, Ohio. Ryan, thanks for taking time for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Glad to talk with you.
So I get this email Brad sends me that we're with the talking points, man. We're gonna have an evaluation system that's going to reward the good ones, going to weed out the bad ones, going to make sure those teaching folk that they're capable, that they know what they're doing, and that they're the best they can be.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
Well, I mean, you're right to say that these are popular talking points and certainly the prevailing wisdom behind the changes that we've seen over the last 10 years. And really what we're seeing is a push from people who have realized that the way we evaluated teachers for a long time didn't always give us the differentiation between what they were looking for as who were the good teachers and the bad teachers. And honestly, to some degree, as a former public school teacher myself, and a lot of informed by a lot of colleagues I've spoken to, some of the time that was probably true, but it was because of the lack of, for example, in the fine arts where I work, fine arts coordinators and sort of master teachers who could help to supplement, a principal in evaluating teachers. Principals were so overworked that teacher evaluations were sort of rare. And the response has been to sort of go really hard at finding the bad teachers. And unfortunately, we know that even in the systems that have sort of cost us millions and have started to incorporate value-added methodology, VAMs, we're still only finding, about 2% of teachers who show up as ineffective, which was true before. So there might be a lot of sort of misplaced worry when instead, I think a lot of us who look at this issue would hope that teacher evaluation turns to being more diagnostic and helpful for teachers in helping them to improve.
Yeah, but here's the thing, and I talked about this in the last segment. I don't ever remember in my years of going to school of ever having a really bad teacher. And I don't even know what the definition of that is. I've had some that I didn't like, and I've had some that were just wildly inspiring. But I've had friends who were just the inverse. The people that I found inspiring, they found to be horrible, and vice versa. I think a lot of this is subjective, though. Or am I missing something?
Well, it is and it isn't. I mean, I think there are ways to sort of know who are the best performers and who are maybe the lowest performers. But as you suggest, it's nuanced for sure. And the big question that I'm hearing researchers ask is, if we claim a teacher is good, can we drop them into any school or any classroom in a school, and are they going to be good there? If we claim that a teacher is bad, how much of that has to do with the makeup of the students they see and the sort of achievement levels that are reasonable to be expected or not, and the resources and the capacity of the school or the school leadership. So, I mean, you bring up a good point. Is a good teacher or bad teacher, quote unquote, good everywhere or bad everywhere?
And for everyone, because I do agree, I do believe that people learn differently. I was never a lecture-based learner. I was, let me get my hands on it, let me figure out how to play with it, and I can figure it out. But if I have to sit and listen to you drone on, you're going to lose me.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you point out, not only are teachers sort of having different impacts on different students, but different kind of classrooms sort of call for different styles of teaching, and age level appropriateness is a concern. And too many of the tools and the instruments that have been really sort of championed and forced to be part of evaluations by, be it states, mostly your local school districts, don't have enough nuance there, right? They're sort of a one size fits all.
And the question that I have is, at the end of the day, are we making this more complicated than it has to be? I mean, I don't ever remember, like I said, having a bad teachers per se. They all understood the material. They were all very well versed in what they were presenting, but some inspired a little bit more than others. And I just think we've complicated this. And it appears to me, and this is just my personal opinion, that the end game is to really kind of just force people out of it and turn this into like a part-time profession, if you will.
Well, yeah, I mean, let's talk about where a lot of the current push for change has come from. And part of it, you can look no further than some influential think tanks like the New Teacher Project, which now goes by TNTP. And their report in, I think it was 2007, was called The Widget Effect. And it basically said, look, less than 2% of teachers in Chicago public schools are rated as ineffective every year. And the sort of the face they tried to put on this was, and it's because, this is a problem because we treat teachers like widgets. We don't give them enough information and pay the good ones enough and this and that. But I guess the cynic in me shares your concern that was the start of a thrust to say, we need to find the worst teachers and lop off, as the Stanford economist Eric Hanushek, who's done a lot of influential educational economical research, has said, just lop off the bottom 5 or 10% and we'd improve, test score outcomes. So I think we do have people who want teacher evaluation to be a means of really changing the makeup of the profession and bringing in sort of, teachers from alternative certification programs to take the spots of these, quote unquote, bad teachers. There are definitely people out there who have good intentions, right? Who do want teacher evaluation to change to be more helpful to teachers. But by and large, I share your cynicism about the origins of some of this.
Because the way I look at it, and most people my age, I'm 48. I think most people my age think school is just like the way it was when we were back in school. But the way I see it, because I've got young children now in school, and completely different, this obsession with this test, this single-minded focus with numbers and data, and not creativity, not thinking outside the box, not problem solving, but filling in bubbles and passing evaluations just seems to me to be a direction that I don't know that I'm thrilled with.
No, and I think a lot of us feel exactly the same. I mean, this started in a sense under No Child Left Behind, where getting the kids who were right on the bubble to pass the state test meant everything. And schools, we have all the research to show that schools did the logical thing, which was to ignore the best and brightest and ignore the ones who would never pass, and sort of just focus on those bubble kids, as they were called in certain cases. And so that was obviously narrow, and it led to a lot of just narrow test prep in the place of creative teaching and curriculum. And now, as we've sort of turned our eye from looking at the school level test to sort of focusing on individual teacher quality, we're doing the same thing in a sense, although we're making it even harder for teachers, because no longer when I think a creative teachable moment pops up, does that teacher feel comfortable, doing something inspiring with students when they know that sort of, the little devil sitting on their shoulder is reminding them of the score they're going to get based on how their kids do on that fill in the bubble state test. So yeah, it's a big problem.
It is. And we just went and did the Meet the Teachers night not too long ago, and the one music class my oldest daughter's taking, I met the guy, and he almost seemed demoralized because there's nothing on the test for him, and he's like, this is kind of where they send him when they're. It was kind of like it was a secondary, like an afterthought almost. And I remember thinking, what we've done to the humanities, it seems to be also wrong-minded.
Yeah, there's a number of places where the cheap approach has won out. And unfortunately, that means, well, we don't have these test score data. We don't have them for the music and art teacher. So I guess we'll just use the English scores, or we'll just use the math scores. And sometimes you hear, sort of pretty phrases like, well, everyone should be a teacher of reading. But, it's really, I think, wrong-headed, and it just deprofessionalizes what those skillful humanities, fine arts teachers do, which is to take students through, a sequential, standards-based, fine arts curriculum, and to do it with a lot of sort of creativity and grace and hands-on experiential learning. So I'm not surprised that teacher felt demoralized, probably both by feeling like a sort of afterthought in the scheme, but also I'm hearing from a lot of teachers in my research music teachers, that is, who are being told they now have to find time to teach fractions, or they now need to find time to do a Common Core close reading exercise when they've only got 38 minutes to work with their orchestra. So that's been a real issue too.
That seems kind of wrong. I mean, at the end of the day, it seems to me that to have a well-rounded education, that's got to be part of it. I never bought into the whole idea that education is just about reading, writing, and arithmetic, and like it seems that we're heading.
Yeah, and I think the sad thing and the frightening thing to me is it seems fairly bipartisan. I'm waiting for someone to suggest that we stop the narrow focus on reading and math and sometimes science, which was sort of brought in under No Child Left Behind, and include a look at all the subjects, importantly, but so far no luck.
Now, I always think of George Carlin when you talk about education. He said, we want people just smart enough to fill in the bubbles and move the paperwork around and do the work, but not smart enough to ask why.
Yeah, and it's interesting. We've got these two pushes going on right now, and they're going in exactly opposite directions as far as I can tell. One being a push toward sort of technical skills needed for us to be economically competitive. And I don't think anyone who's behind that thinking would even argue with that. I don't think I'm overstating. And then you've got another push of people asking students to do project-based learning and experiential learning and hands-on and the list goes on and on, really sort of the innovative things that do make schooling today different than it was years ago. And I don't know how we're going to reconcile these things, because we're basically just at cross purposes.
Yeah, is this a dividing line of the class war, if you will? I mean, is this where as Warren Buffett said, the wealthy get the education they want for their kids, and everybody else, you're stuck with what's left?
I think, unfortunately, in some cases, it really does come down along class lines, and I'm not as worried about the kids in a suburban district like the one I grew up in, where the sort of emphasis is on the fine arts and things like that for both parents and kids. And when the budget is tight at a school board meeting, they know that they shouldn't cut music and art because the parents would be up in arms. But too often, for example, in Lansing, Michigan, right near where I just finished up school, we saw an unprecedented cut where the district took away every elementary art, music, and PE teacher to balance the budget. And what that has done is set up a sort of, as Berliner would call it, an educational apartheid, where kids in our urban districts or districts with high minority populations no longer get a chance to have really the enrichment that other kids get.
So what should parents be doing? I mean, last question I've got for you. What should we be doing as, I guess, educate ourselves to push back against this? Or is there anything we can do? I mean, is the tide going this is where it's going, and we're going to have to see where it takes us?
Well, I think, when you ask parents whether they think that their own teacher and their own schools are doing well, they uniformly are pretty positive about it. But there also is a sort of thing of, well, not in my backyard. I think certain people have been too quick to assume that because they heard a statistic that education is broken in the U.S. And so I think people need to look at their own community and support the things that they find valuable. And the message, I would say, especially to those who care about, say, the fine arts and worry about those teachers being squeezed out to focus on math and reading, is you got to form some coalitions and be proactive about it, because fairly quickly it can be too late, and a district can decide, well, this stuff is really just sort of frills compared to the stuff that's going to sort of affect the way that we have to rate our teachers, and the way that the grade that we're going to get on that report card that gets issued for our district. So.
And this is another one of those,
yeah.
To me, another one of those moments where I'm in favor of local control and public control, not this handing over to private operators, our school districts, with no accountability to we the people. Just kind of my thought to throw in there as well.
Sure. And I think you are seeing some people start to fight back and say, hey, our teachers are important, and we have been giving them meaningful professional development, and we're evaluating them. So, they're saying to the states, to sort of back off and let them have a local perspective on what the community wants of their school and teacher, rather than trying to sort of, again, fit it into that one-size-fits-all statewide formula.
Right. Ryan, I appreciate you taking a little time for us. Thanks for sharing your insight. I appreciate it.
I enjoyed it very much. Thank you.
Great talking with you. Let's take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
I want to take a moment to thank you for your support. If you're helping to raise children as a parent, teacher, family member, etc., I acknowledge the sacrifices that you make, and I thank you. Now, in terms of this music, I hope it comes across very clearly how much I love teaching and how much I believe we must do better for our children. As a veteran teacher, I've seen the damage caused by ill-conceived reforms and the era of teacher bashing, labeling students, and labeling schools. We need as much support as possible to fight this machine that's not making decisions with the best interest of children in mind. Please, stand with us.
We're yelling, stop this madness from the front lines, bringing you a breath of fresh air. Check the sunrise, our people grind, and you know that we don't stop. Highly effective, ever rising right to the top.
House Speaker John Boehner gave up his position because he couldn't stand the job anymore. Next in line was Representative Kevin McCarthy, who started running for the job but quickly backed off. Representative Paul Ryan says he's thinking about taking the job, even though he doesn't want it. What's at work here is the crazy caucus. At one level or another, nearly all Republican House members belong, but the caucus is driven by about 50 hyper-crazies who believe that the greatest problems facing our country are Hillary Clinton's emails, Planned Parenthood, the existence of public services, and the, quote, hordes of Mexicans who sneak into our country so they can vote for Democrats. It's the job of the House Speaker to try leading these mad dogs to an occasional bit of sanity. Who really wants to do that, or even thinks it's possible? Well, several of the mad dogs themselves say they should be put in charge. Daniel Webster says he's available, not the smart guy who compiled the dictionary, but a Tea Party bozo from Florida. Bill Flores, a little-known Tea Party know-nothing from Texas, says he would unite the House by getting all the members to, quote, spend enough time on our knees praying for each other. That's silly, but the idea of keeping lawmakers on their knees is appealing. Mike Pompeo of Kansas, a prince of right-wing pomposity who was elected by the billionaire Koch brothers to be their personal representative in Washington, says he's ready to lead the House toward a coke-headed plutocracy. This is Jim Hightower saying, that's pathetic. But wait, we have another surprising choice. It's a little-known fact, but the Speaker of our House of Representatives does not actually have to be a member of Congress. So why don't we choose someone like a kindergarten teacher, a minimum wage worker, an organic farmer, or a circus ringmaster to run the show? Or maybe a group psychologist is what the place needs.
What do the corporate powers from Wall Street to Walmart have in common? They hate the Hightower Lowdown. You can see why at www.hightowerlowdown.org.
From the United Nations, this is your World in 2 Minutes. I'm your host, Luke Vargas, with the Talk Radio News Service. A border fence being constructed by Hungary along its border with Serbia is complete, effectively sealing off one entry route used by Syrian and other asylum seekers trying to reach Europe. Slovenia is now recording a major uptick in migrant arrivals, including 5,000 on Monday alone. The country said it will cap arrivals at 2,500 per day, but it's hard to change the weather. Slovenia is now blaming Croatia for letting an unsustainable number of migrants pass through their shared border. Secretary of State John Kerry heads to Germany this week to meet with Israeli government officials and later to Jordan for meetings with Palestinian officials as fighting continues to flare up between the two parties. 34 Palestinians and 8 Israelis have been killed in recent weeks in a series of freak attacks. There have been incidents in the Palestinian West Bank, including an attack at the supposed site of Joseph's tomb in Nablus, but the majority of concern centers on Jerusalem and one of the city's holiest and most central of sites, the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Palestinians allege their already restricted access to the holy site is being further limited as Jewish groups gain greater access. Israel has rejected calls from France for UN security personnel to guard the site and lessen tensions. John Kerry, meanwhile, trying to stake out a reasoned position in the middle of a heated issue, admits something has to change.
In my conversations with the Prime Minister, as well as with King Abdullah and the Foreign Minister of Jordan, they have expressed a desire to try to see this process be able to find a way of making certain that everybody is clear about what is happening with respect to the Temple Mount.
For more global news headlines, visit talkradionews.com.
These are words you should have told the truth. You're lying and traitor, and now we got the proof. Where you gonna run to? Where you gonna hide?
Interesting look at the evaluations today as we do education. Usually on Mondays today, Bat Radio Tuesday, back on Mondays. You know, we normally do it the third hour on Mondays, but it was away yesterday. Had an amazing weekend with my son. And again, you know, the reason I think education is so very important is it really is all about the children. It is about my kids' future because, you know, I look around and, you know, the jobs, the opportunities that I had, they're not going to be here for the next generation. And that's scary to me. Anyway, if you missed any of today's program, thericksmithshow.com. That's where you go to get the podcast. The Rick Smith Show app on the smartphone. Take the program on the go wherever you go. As always, you can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Thanks for being here.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Together, we can make America better. Email rick@thericksmithshow.com or interact with us anytime at thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
It's coming like the tide of flood beneath the lunar sway. Imperial, mysterious, in amorous array. Democracy is coming.